Hello everyone. If you are new to my channel, then consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do it, thanks. By the way, I also have a Luffy fan fiction channel. If you are interested, the link is in the description. Dragonslayer by KitsuneDragon. He said he saw great potential in my small body and he raised me. Because of him I lived, I learned, and I finally found someone I could call friend, even if he didn't call me the same. I am his son. I am his student, the Dragonslayer of Acnologia. I don't own anything. Adios.
Unknown Forest. Year X 777 Naruto's cerulean orbs stared into the 5-year-old girl's own brown orbs as if he were contemplating something. Wendy dared not move as she kept seeing the blonde stranger gazing at her. Kurama watched from the trees to see what Naruto would do. "Brat, what are you thinking?" the red-eyed cat thought. Or why you going to kill me?" Wendy stuttered. Naruto looked at the girl's innocent frame. She was shivering in fear. The blonde continued to watch the girl for a few moments before cutting off his magic and the wind blade vanished. Wendy's eyes widened, but then she glanced around again. The trauma suddenly caught up with her, dead and bleeding wolves. The blood-covered blonde Dragonslayer. It was all too much for the 5-year-old, and thus her eyes rolled into the back of her head and she fainted. Naruto blinked when he saw the blue-haired girl fall against the tree, unconscious. "Maybe you shouldn't have made those wolves' deaths so bloody," Kurama said as he flew down. Naruto turned to the Exceed before looking at Wendy. "Acnology had taught me that the strong survive and the weak die. Those wolves preyed on a weak girl and so they deserved to die," Naruto said without emotion. Kurama sighed. "Naruto, you of all people should know that Acnologia's teachings are not law. He taught you everything you know and made you strong, yes, but that does not mean that your judgment on humanity should be the exact same as his," Kurama said, but then he got a questionable look on his face. "So what are you going to do with the girl?" Kurama asked. Naruto didn't answer as he walked over to Wendy and picked her up gently, holding her bridal style. He looked at the girl's face, peaceful and full of pure innocence. Naruto tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear and wiped a little bit of the blood that fell onto her face from his hands. The blood that caked his hands had long dried due to his use of wind magic, so he didn't stain her dress. "Wendy Marvell. She is like me," Naruto said. Kurama raised an eyebrow. "Like you in what way?" the red-furred cat asked. Naruto began to walk off in the direction of where he and Kurama had found the small river. "She is the daughter of the sky, so she is like me in more ways than one," Naruto answered cryptically. Kurama's eyes widened as he paused in mid-flight, staring at the retreating back of his blonde partner. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Kurama glared daggers at Naruto. He then looked at the dead wolves and picked 2 of them up for Wendy to eat when she awoke, while burning the other bodies with a small fireball. Unknown Forest night. Naruto and Kurama stared up at the night sky, the stars twinkling above them. The 2 wolf bodies were slowly roasting over the roaring fire they had made, its orange-yellow flames providing light and heat for those caught in its glow. Wendy's still unconscious form was on the ground beside the fire. A green blanket given to her by Naruto was cast over her body to help keep her body temperature at a suitable level as the night air was rather chilly. "So did you mean it when you said that?" Kurama asked. Naruto tore his eyes away from the stars as looked in the cat's direction. "What do you mean?" he asked the Exceed. Kurama's crimson eyes still remained fixated on the stars, suddenly gained a serious look on his face. "Your goal? To kill the Dragon King? Did you really mean that?" Naruto's eyes widened slightly at the Exceed's question, but then nodded. "Yes. I swore an oath of the dragon, I will help Toussaint in killing that bastard," Naruto growled. "I see," the cat stated. However, before Kurama could speak once more, the sound of the young girl's voice met them. Naruto and Kurama turned to see the girl beginning to stir. Wendy groaned as she woke up. Her eyes slowly opened, her pupils expanding and dilating as they adjusted to the darkness of the night mixed with the light of the fire. What happened?" she groaned, but then everything came back to her. She shot up, throwing the blanket off of her. She looked to see the blanket and looked puzzled. "Where did I get that?" She was interrupted as Naruto spoke. "You're awake." Wendy's head snapped to the side and she gasped when she saw the teenage Dragonslayer. The young, blue-haired girl backed away from the boy as the memory of his slaughtering of the wolves came to her mind. She quickly got up and turned, aiming to run away from her almost killer. However, before she could even get 5 steps, Naruto appeared in front of her in a blur of speed, causing her to smack into him and send her to the ground. The blue-haired girl gulped in fear as she saw the boy stare down at her, a product of his superior height. Are you going to kill me?" she stuttered. The young Dragonslayer trembled when she saw Naruto bend down to look at her at eye level. "No," he stated simply. Wendy's brown eyes widened as she watched the boy in front of her. Really?" she asked. Naruto nodded. Why? Because you're like me," Naruto said. Kurama watched. his ears twitching as his question had been exactly like Wendy's, but the answer he received was rather vague. Daughter of the Sky. PFFT, what does that even mean? The cat thought once more. Naruto bared his teeth, revealing his sharp canines, and showed her his eyes. The pupils changing from round to slitted. The blue-haired girl gasped. You know what I am now, right? Wendy nodded slowly, her shock evident on her face. Why you're a... Naruto nodded to confirm Wendy's unfinished sentence. Yes, I am a child of a dragon. Just like you, Wendy Marvell. Kurama's and Wendy's eyes widened for different reasons. Kurama's was because he never would have thought that such a frail little girl would be the child of a dragon, while Wendy's was for the fact that her suspicions about the boy had been confirmed. How did you know I was raised by a dragon? Wendy asked. I smelled you before, remember? You smelled of fresh air, feathers and reptile. The reptilian scent is a scent found only on a dragon. It is a scent known only to us Dragonslayers and can only be recognized by Dragonslayers, Naruto said. Is that why when I saw you, I thought as if we met BB before? She asked. Naruto nodded. Dragonslayers share an unknown bond with one another that allows us to recognize each other. After a Dragonslayer is able to recognize one of their one, the ability to sense another becomes almost instinctual. He paused to make sure the girl was listening before continuing. Now the two other scents have led me to conclude that you are a daughter of the sky, correct? Grandine's child? Wendy immediately climbed to her feet, causing Naruto to tilt his head slightly upward due to her standing form being a bit taller than his sitting one. You know Grandine? She asked. Naruto shrugged. I know of her, but personally, I don't know her, he said. Wendy grabbed onto the boy's shoulders. Tell me, do you know where she went? Where is Ka-chan? She cried out. Naruto remained silent for a moment. I am not permitted to reveal such information. I am bound by an oath of the dragon. I swore to my two-san that I wouldn't utter a word of what he had told me to anyone, even if I deemed them worthy. And you, my young Sky Dragon Slayer, are not worthy of hearing the information that I have, and even if you were worthy I still wouldn't be able to tell you as the oath of the dragon prevents me from doing so, Naruto said. The blue-haired girl trembled as she clenched her hands into fists. Tears lined her eyes before spilling over, tracing over her face and staining the grass-covered earth. What kind of stupid reason is that? Wendy cried. I want to know where my Ka-chan is. Naruto remained silent before standing up, and then the wind picked up around him, causing the girl to fall to her knees as she felt the force of his magic power come crashing down on her. Do not speak to me in such a tone, you weak excuse for a Dragonslayer. Naruto shouted. Wendy looked up and gasped yes. Gone were his irises of a bright cerulean blue, and instead his eyes were a pure, shining white. The flames behind him suddenly extended into a pillar behind him as the wind picked up, giving him a rather frightening appearance as all, but his eyes were enshrouded in the shadows produced by the flames. The magic power then died down along with the flames and wind, and Wendy released the breath she had unknowingly held captive within her lungs. Naruto sighed, closing his eyes before looking at the frightened girl. Kurama shook his head. He really is Agnologia's son. Stand, Sky Dragon. Naruto said. The blue-haired girl nodded as she climbed to her feet, tears still trickling from her eyes. Seeing this, Naruto's eyes lost their frightening glow and his blue irises returned as his eyes slowly reopened, which almost seemed to take a gentler appearance. So, are you injured in any way? Naruto asked. Wendy blinked. Huh? Were you damaged when you were running from the wolves? Wendy shook her head before revealing her body was void of any wounds. Grandine Ka-chan said BB because I'm her D-daughter. I have a HH healing FF factor or something like that. Wendy stuttered as she was still sniffling and her fear of the boy was still present. Naruto bent down on one knee and observed her skin. Fascinating. So this is what a child of Grandine is capable of, he whispered to himself. Wendy watched as Naruto was observing the areas that were previously damaged by branches and wolf claws. Then she realized something. Grandine had always taught her manners, and even if this boy here had tried to end her life, she still had to repay him for saving her life. Sir, I was just wanted to say. Naruto. Wendy looked up at him, confusion evident in her eyes. Huh? My name is Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and the cosplaying cat over there is Kurama. He introduced himself, and the Exceed. Said Exceed was glaring at Naruto for the title he was given. Wendy blinked before continuing. Well, Naruto-san, I just wanted to say thank you for saving me from those wolves. If you hadn't shown up when you did, I would have. Wendy broke down into tears once more as the thought of her dying overwhelmed her. Kurama flew over to the girl and patted her head gently. Yo, girlie. Listen here, it's okay to be scared. I mean, you nearly died, nay? It's understandable, especially considering it was probably your first experience with near death, but it's okay now. You're alive now, and that's all that matters now, Kurama said with a toothy grin. Suddenly he was pulled into an embrace by the 5-year-old Dragonslayer. Oi, I didn't say you could hug me like a freaking teddy bear. Let me go, you foolish girl. Damn it. Kurama pushed against the little girl's rather strong embrace and he was finding it difficult to escape in his cat form. Kurama. What? Kurama growled, pausing in his struggles, but then saw Naruto's face. His gaze was no longer emotionless, but now he saw pity in those cerulean orbs of his. Leave her be. She's been through much, leave her be. I will continue to speak with you tomorrow, Sky Dragon. She looked up at Naruto to see if his angry expression was still there and mentally sighed in relief when she saw he was simply stoic. She continued to hug Kurama, though her grip was now much looser. She saw Naruto reach into his backpack and took out a small box. He opened the box and removed a small piece of paper. On the paper was a glowing red magic seal. Naruto placed the paper on the ground before placing his palm on the paper. Seal magic. Release, he shouted. Wendy then gazed in awe as she saw the paper become enveloped in a plume of white smoke. When the cloud of smoke cleared, there lay a small black sleeping bag. Wow, that was so cool. Wendy gaped in amazement. Naruto-san, can you teach me how to do that too? Naruto looked at her with a raised eyebrow. Seal magic is a complicated magic. It requires great amounts of theoretical knowledge in order for it to be learned. I myself have only just begun to learn the art and thus I am only able to store things and release them. Wendy blinked. There were a lot of big words in there. Naruto-san. What do they mean? Naruto paused as he unfurled the sleeping bag and looked at the blue-haired girl. Suddenly he saw the image of Wendy was replaced with an image of his younger self. He looked to be around 6 years old, the age at which he had started to learn magic. You'll learn them when you are taught them, he answered. Naruto dragged the sleeping bag over to Wendy before taking the large green blanket he had given her from before. Then why don't you teach me? Naruto froze at the girl's words. The blonde's eyes moved back and forth rapidly as the prospect of taking on a student filled his mind before he looked at Kurama, still trapped in the girl's hug as if he were a stuffed doll. The cat shrugged. It's not my decision. The costumed cat seemed to say. Naruto shook his head. I forgot I had this. Here, sleep, he told her, ignoring her question. Wendy looked at the blonde and wondered why he was suddenly so nice rather than the cold-blooded killer he was just moments ago. Naruto then took the green blanket and laid it flat on the grass-covered ground before lying atop it. Wendy gave a small smile to her scary savior. Thank you, Naruto-san, she exclaimed before diving into the sleeping bag. Naruto saw Kurama was still trapped in the little girl's grasp. The Exceed was looking at him with a pleading look. Naruto smirked as he resisted the urge to laugh at Kurama's predicament before turning to Wendy. You're welcome. Wendy was shocked at the blonde Dragonslayer's words before grinning. Looks like she was able to pierce through those hard dragon scales, even if it was just a tiny bit. Good night, Naruto-san, she called out. Don't push your luck, Sky Dragon, Naruto said with some annoyance. I was merely humoring you. The response caused the little girl to laugh lightly before she suddenly began to feel tired and immediately fell asleep as soon as her eyes closed. The next day Wendy yawned as she rose up from the sleeping bag. Huh? Oh right, Naruto-san gave me it. She remembered. She looked around the area. The smoking remains of the campfire was in front of her. It was then that she noticed that she was alone. Wendy's eyes suddenly gained a downcast look. I'm alone. Again. She gritted her teeth, first Ka-chan. Now Naruto-san. Wendy felt tears form in her eyes, but she willed them not to fall. Suddenly she heard the sound of a twig snapping. Her head twisted around so fast anyone else would have thought her neck would snap from the whiplash. The bushes then parted and revealed the blonde Dragonslayer and his Exceed partner with 3 dead birds. Naruto-san. Naruto blinked as he looked at the Sky Dragonslayer, a smile on her face. What? Acnologia's Dragonslayer asked. I thought you left, she said. Naruto looked perplexed. And why would I do that? I haven't eaten breakfast yet. Wendy's sweat dropped at the reasoning that Naruto gave her. Good to see you're finally up, brat. Wendy turned to see Kurama flying next to her. Off flying cat. She seemed to fly out of the sleeping bag and ducked behind Naruto's leg. Naruto-san, your cat is flying. Oh sure. You don't get scared when I talk, but you get scared when I grow wings and start to fly. Wendy nodded. I've lived with a dragon and she showed me a lot of stuff and so surprise is not something I feel a lot. Unless the things are eunuchs pocketed. Unexpected, her tongue was getting rather tied up as she struggled to get the word right. Unexpected, Naruto guessed. Wendy nodded as she held onto Naruto's pant leg. Yeah, that. Kurama planted his face in his paws and shook his head, mumbling about annoying humans. Kurama then used his ability to generate heat and cook the birds after they were plucked and gutted. A sight which Wendy was more than happy to turn away from. As they ate their breakfast, Wendy spoke Last night, when I asked you what happened to Grandine. I told you, I am bound by the oath of the dragon. I cannot tell anyone, not even my fellow Dragonslayers. Naruto said as he took another bite of the dead bird. I know, but what is the oath of the dragon? She asked. Naruto paused in his eating before looking at Kurama. You explain it to her, he said. The fox-like cat growled. She asked you the damn question. Answer her yourself, you lazy brat, Kurama said before returning to his meal. Naruto rolled his eyes at the exceed. Stupid fluff ball, he mumbled, earning himself a glare from said fluff ball. An oath of the dragon is an unbreakable promise that one makes to another. Only dragons and dragonslayers are able to make such a promise as they know of the consequences of this oath. Regular humans and mages can utter an oath of the dragon, but should they decide to break their promises, let's just say the consequences are dire. What does dire mean? Wendy asked. The 5-year-old girl caused both Exceed and Dragonslayer to sweat drop. It means very, very bad. Kurama toned the meaning down for her brain to comprehend. Wendy's mouth formed a small O as she understood the word. Kurama then flew across to Naruto and landed atop his head where he made his resting place. So, Naruto-san, when can I be worthy to be heard of where my Ka-chan went? She asked. Naruto picked his teeth as he threw away the bones of the bird he just finished devouring. Insert music. Fairy tale slow theme. The only ones that I will tell this information are those who I see as strong. You, my dear Sky Dragon Slayer, are far from it. You are as weak as they come. I could so far as to call you downright pitiful, Naruto said. Wendy winced under his harsh words. However, her dragon pride suddenly kicked in and she rose to her feet. Besides, even if you were worthy, I still couldn't. His words seemed to drift off as Wendy began to tremble. Flashback unknown location, year X 776, Vernier. A 4-year-old Wendy cried out. She sped through the grass landscape before using her enhanced speed to jump into the air. She spied a boulder and positioned her body to aim for it. She inhaled air and infused it with her magic energy. Tenryu no Hoko, Sky Dragon's roar. She released the giant, sky blue twister from her jaws. The attack funneled through the air before impacting with the boulder. When the attack ended, Wendy fell to the ground on her ass. She groaned in pain, rubbing her sore backside. Ouchie, she murmured before looking at the boulder. The boulder was barely even scratched. Wendy gripped a fistful of grass and then began to cry. Wendy, is something wrong? A feminine voice spoke. Wendy turned to see a large white draconian beast. The dragon had a large body that easily towered over the vegetation surrounding it. The top of its body, head and chest were covered with white fur of some kind. A pair of large feathery wings, also white, were connected to the area where the shoulder blades would be located. Its limbs and underbelly were not covered by fur or feathers of any kind. The underbelly was similar to that of a reptile's, but the limbs were like that of an eagle's. 4 talons were located on each limb. It had a large tail. Its upper part was covered with white fur like the rest of its upper body parts, while the underneath was shown to have a similar look to that of its underbelly. The tail flicked the air behind it. In its jaws were sharp, white teeth that could easily tear flesh from bone. Its eyes, outlined by a thick black area of what seemed to be the skin beneath the feathers, were a golden yellow and seemed to shine as they stared at Wendy. This was Grandine, the Sky Dragon. Ka-chan. Wendy ran up to her surrogate mother and hugged the dragon's large forelimb. Shush shush, it's okay my dear. It's okay. Why don't you tell me what's wrong, Wendy? If you hurt yourself I can make you feel better, alright? The Sky Dragon said with a soft smile. Wendy sniffled before gripping her mother's limb tighter. I couldn't break the rock like you could, Ka-chan. I tried to use Tenryu no Hoko, but it was so weak. The rock didn't even break, Ka-chan. I'm never going to be strong like you. I'm so weak. Why am I not strong? She asked. Grandine's eyes widened before her gaze softened upon looking at her daughter's sad form. The girl's tears stained her face as they left her tear ducts. Grandine raised her large tail and gently stroked the blue-haired girl's head. Wendy, let me tell you something. Not all strength lies in brute force, but rather it lies in the strength of the body and the mind. One's mindset can often manipulate how strong one can become, and thus if you think you can do something, it will often be able to be done. I don't understand, she replied, wiping her nose on the fur of Grandine's tail. Grandine's eyes narrowed in disgust and a sweeted drop formed on the dragon's head at that. But not wanting to provoke any more tears from the girl, she merely flicked the appendage, causing the mucus to fly off. Wendy, I am not necessarily the strongest dragon in the world. My healing and supporting abilities do not make the most physically adept dragon, and as such I am looked down upon as one of the weakest dragons. Let me show you something. Grandine spoke before walking over to the very boulder Wendy had struck with Tenryu no Hoko. Grandine then looked at Wendy and pushed over to the boulder. Now Wendy, you know that you cannot punch through that boulder, correct? Yeah, cause it's big and hard and it would hurt a lot if I did, the young Dragonslayer said. Grandine nodded. Exactly. Now use Vernier and arms. Wendy looked confused for a moment, but did so. She cast the 2 spells and her body began to slightly vibrate as her speed increased and the strength in her arms multiplied by large amounts. Now punch the boulder. Huh? Are you insane, Ka-chan? Grandine chuckled at her daughter's expression, but shook her head. No, my dear. Watch, just do it and you will understand my point. Wendy gulped as she looked at the towering rock. She thrust back her fist and trembled slightly in fear of her hurting herself. Of course, that could be the side effect of her vibrating body as a result of Vernier. You can do it, Wendy. I know you can. Just believe that you can and you will make it happen. Is Ka-chan insane? I break my whole arm if I punch that big rock and it'll hurt really, really badly. Wendy shook her head. No, I'm Grandine's daughter. I can do this. Just punch it. I am Grandine, Ka-chan's child. Wendy released a cry as she thrust her fist forward. Her eyes were shut tight as she expected her fist to meet solid rock and white-hot pain to flood her arm. Instead, she felt nothing and she watched as there was a large crack where her fist had landed. Around said fist was a small amount of swirling air, the cause of her lack of pain. Upon her surprise, the air currents vanished and Wendy continued to stare as she spied the crack she made. The crack was small in comparison to the size of the boulder, but the fact that she actually cracked it spoke volumes to the young blue-haired Dragonslayer. Ka-chan, did you see that? I cracked it. Grandine chuckled at her daughter before patting her gently with a large clawed forehand. I did, my daughter. You see now, strength does come from one's own physical strength, but it comes from one believing in oneself to be able to show such strength. The strength of the body is equal to the strength of one's mindset. If you think you can do something, then it will most likely happen. You're the child of the sky, Wendy. You're the daughter of a dragon. Do not ever forget that. Your pride as a Dragonslayer will be your greatest strength and will lead you to tapping into a power that not even you know you had. Thank you, Ka-chan, for teaching me this. The young girl hugged her mother. Grandine smiled soft at her daughter. You are not weak in my eyes, Wendy. If anyone ever doubts that, then show them me power of the sky, you are strong. End flashback. I am strong, she whispered. Naruto's and Kurama's ears twitched as they picked up on the sound of her voice. What did you say? Naruto asked. I am strong, she roared. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Are you? You seemed pretty weak from the fact that you nearly got beaten by a small pack of wolves, he answered with a raised eyebrow. I am strong. Ka-chan told me I was strong. I am worthy to know where my Ka-chan went. I am a Dragonslayer. Naruto stood up, his form towering over the smaller girl's own. However, the small 5-year-old was defiant. Her brown eyes burning with determination. She bared her canines and her pupils became slitted. The wind began to swirl around her as her magic energy spiked. Peeved, yeah right. You're not strong. You're a pitiful, weak, useless and most undeserving Dragonslayer I have ever met. Naruto said with a stoic look on his face. He wasn't blind, he remembered how he started learning magic at Wendy's age and then it took him years to improve greatly. He actually sensed a decent amount of magic power from Wendy when she fell asleep and he was still awake. He knew she had potential, she was just inexperienced, young and fragile cause of her age and obviously because Grandine didn't get to finish her training before leaving her. Wendy gritted her teeth, eyes descending to look at the grass, as the force of his magic energy came crashing down on her, but she remained on her feet. The crimson-eyed Exceed smirked at the scene before him. Interesting girl, let's see what you will do now that Naruto has taken an interest in you, Kurama thought. She withstood my magical pressure and killing intent. Impressive, Naruto thought. Do you really believe you are strong, Sky Dragon? Naruto asked, wanting to hear her response. Yes, she muttered. I can't hear you, Sky Dragon. I asked you. Do you believe you are strong? Naruto exclaimed. Wendy looked back up and stared into Naruto's cerulean blue orbs. Yes, I am strong. I am a Dragonslayer. I can match up to you. Wendy's magic power continued to climb, the air currents seeming to bend to her will as when she threw down her arms in a rage. 2 craters formed in the ground due to the force generated by the pressurized air bullets that formed from her movement. Can you? Well then, Wendy Marvell, daughter of Gradine the Sky Dragon. If you are a true Dragonslayer, then roar, Naruto yelled. Wendy's eyes widened at the command. What? She exclaimed. I didn't say to say, what? Girl. I said roar, show me your roar. Show me the power of the Sky Dragon. Wendy's eyes hardened as her gaze met Naruto's. Her magic power spiked as she took a deep breath. Ka-chan. I am worthy of knowing why you left me and where you went. Wendy thought as she continued to inhale the very essence of the air surrounding her. I am not weak because I am your daughter. Wendy's eyes then snapped open as her lungs filled themselves to the brim with magic energy-infused air. I am the Sky Dragonslayer, she mentally shouted. She bent back and aimed at Naruto and Kurama. Both Exceed and Apocalypse Dragonslayer gazed in shock at her boldness before smirking. Show me what you got, brat. Naruto whispered to himself before getting into a horse stance. His forearms were raised so that they made a 90-degree angle with his elbow joint. He bent his forearms inwards, towards his chest to protect his face. Black and dark blue magic energy starting to spring up around his feet. I will show you the wrath of the sky, Wendy roared. Naruto and Kurama's grins were wider at that as Wendy opened her mouth, stretching those specific facial muscles to their limits. Tenryu no Hokoo. Wendy suddenly released the pent-up power in her lungs. A gigantic twister of air and magic rocketed towards Naruto. The blonde, blue-eyed teenager and the crimson-eyed Exceed grinned widely as they watched the incoming attack. The attack barreled into them. The earth was torn apart as well as a few trees a good few feet behind them were all knocked down by the gale force winds. When the attack ended, Wendy was on the ground panting. She was resting on her knees, having unconsciously put nearly every ounce of magic energy she had into that attack. She then looked up, her brown eyes widening when she saw Naruto's arms raised in front of him. Black and blue magic energy swirled in his hand as he stood in the same spot he was in even after the attack, with the only damage being some slight tearing on his cloths and small scratch marks on his hand that quickly healed vanished as the seal did its job. The magic energy vanished as lowered his hand as he and Kurama looked at each other before looking at Wendy. They whistled in acknowledgement as they surveyed the area. A large trough had been carved out in the dirt from the speeds the Tenryu no Hoko had moved it, and a couple trees lay demolished on the ground. The trough had extended well beyond Naruto's current location. Well done, Sky Dragon. Naruto said, though I started at the age of 6, your breath attack is quite powerful for a 5-year-old such as yourself. You're strong. Naruto praised her. Wendy gave a small smile, but that quickly fell as he spoke once more. But not strong enough. You have untold amounts of potential lying within you, Wendy. It's only right that you unlock that potential and become the Dragonslayer that I'm sure you can become. So, how am I supposed to get stronger? She gasped. She then saw Naruto walk up to her, an emotionless look replacing the wide grin that was once on his face. You're really going to do it? Kurama asked, his voice barely above a whisper as his blonde partner stalked towards the Sky Dragonslayer. The Apocalypse Dragonslayer nodded. She did ask last night, and I never actually gave her an answer, but after seeing this demonstration, I believe she can handle what I have in store for her. Naruto replied to the fox costume wearing feline. Naruto stopped in front of the tired Wendy before raising his right arm high. Wendy closed her eyes, bracing herself for a physical attack from the blonde Dragonslayer. Only, it never came. Wendy's eyes snapped open when she felt something pat her head. Her head snapped up and her brown eyes saw Naruto looking at her with a serious expression. Wendy, you have potential within that small body of yours. You will live, you will learn, and you will become one of the greatest Dragonslayers ever known under my tutelage. The blonde Dragonslayer said. Wendy's eyes widened. WHWH, what are you saying? Naruto smirked as he bent down to her level. What I'm saying is that I, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, your fellow Dragonslayer. I'm going to teach you. I will make you strong, girl. Do you think you can handle it? Naruto said. Wendy's face suddenly became doubtful. She felt the magic energy coming off of the teenager moments ago and it was huge. It felt as if gravity decided to increase its downward movement and try to crush her. She felt scared. Her normally caring and soft personality prevented her from thinking she could handle the blonde's training. I don't. KN, it's yes or no, Wendy. Kurama interrupted her, there is no, I don't know, but take it from me, girl, if you want to become strong, if you want to be strong like a dragon. Learn from the best. This boy here was taught by the strongest known dragon in all of Earthland's history, so you will find no better teacher than him. Now do you accept? Kurama asked. Wendy gulped and her dragon pride allowed her the strength to answer the blonde with a response that sounded like music to their ears. Yes, I can handle your training. Naruto-sensei, Wendy said. Naruto's eyebrow rose while Kurama held in the need to laugh at the girl's sudden change in character. It will be difficult, Naruto said with a grin that mimicked that of his adoptive father's. I'm the daughter of a dragon. I will not back down, Wendy said, baring her sharpened canines. Naruto smirked and nodded. Good answer, now come I need to do, Naruto said. Wendy's eyes widened as she watched Naruto turn away from her, picking up his backpack and started to walk away. She looked at her hands as if she couldn't believe what she had just done. Kurama flapped his wings as he watched the young Dragonslayer. Come, daughter of the sky. You have much to learn, he said. Wendy nodded to the Exceed before following after the blonde. Naruto, Kurama and Wendy moved through the forested area. Naruto was moving aside foliage as he passed through before pausing and sniffing the air. Wendy, how clean would you say the air is here? He asked. Wendy opened her mouth and ate the air. She swallowed and gave a small burp causing her to blush in embarrassment. It's pretty good. Naruto nodded. Good, now if you wouldn't mind standing back a bit. Wendy looked confused, but did as her new sensei instructed her. Kurama grabbed the girl by the collar of her dress before raising her above the forest canopy. Why are you taking me so high up, Kurama-san? The fox costume wearing cat gave a small smile. Because you're about to get a little demonstration as to what kind of power Naruto has. He said, "That and you might get hurt from the blast wave." Wendy's eyes widened at that. "He's really that strong?" She received no reply as she suddenly felt a great concentration of magic energy below her. A loud roar was then heard. Wendy and Kurama spotted a flash of black and blue from between the spaces in the trees of the forest's canopy before a large explosion of magic energy occurred. This resulted in a large dome-shaped blast that completely destroyed everything within its diameter. Wendy gasped in shock as she saw the blast die down. The blast had occurred at least 20 miles away, and even then, she could still feel the wind produced from the explosion. Her state of surprise was retained as she saw the large clearing that had resulted from Naruto's attack. A swirl of wind then appeared in front of Wendy and Kurama as Naruto appeared. Using futon, tobu, he levitated in front of them before observing his damage. Meh, that could work. Wendy's sweat dropped at his nonchalant tone. He's so calm about destroying such a large area of forest, she thought. Wendy was then taken by Naruto before Kurama and he took off towards the newly made clearing. "Couldn't you have toned it down a bit?" Wendy asked, still a bit surprised by just how destructive Naruto's attacks were. "I did actually," he answered truthfully. "That was about 45% of what I can actually do." Wendy gulped. "I'm going to die," she cried to herself. The look on her face caused Kurama to laugh loudly. He just knew Wendy was going to wish she never asked to become Naruto's student after he was done with her. When the three landed in the clearing, Wendy looked to see the dome of energy left nothing behind. Trees outlined the brown, earthy clearing in a perfect circle, and Wendy now had a clear view of the blue sky above. "Wow, so which spell did you use?" she asked. Naruto blinked at her. "That was my breath attack, Mokashiryu no Hoko," he replied. "Mokashiryu? I've never heard of that dragon before," she said. Naruto nodded. "Nor will you ever see him, at least, not anytime soon," Naruto said. Wendy looked at her blonde sensei before seeing him pick up many a stone from the ground. He tossed one up and down in his hand a few times. However, during one of those throws, the moment he caught it, his wrist flicked and the stone came soaring towards Wendy. The 5-year-old's eyes widened as the rock impacted with her stomach with enough force to send her skidding backwards. She coughed as she felt the air was pushed out of her lungs before inhaling to retrieve it. "You're slow, Sky Dragon. Today we'll be working on your speed and agility. Wendy, you are the daughter of the Sky Dragon, Grandine. Grandine is known for her healing prowess and her only offensive attacks are her breath attack, wings, claws, tail and the 2 secret Dragonslayer art attacks, which I know that I cannot teach you," Naruto said. The blue-haired girl looked confused as she stood back up. "Why can't you teach me the offensive attacks?" she asked, struggling with the word, offensive. Naruto shook his head. "You misunderstand. I can teach you the physical attacks such as claws and wings, and you seem to have a good grasp on the use of your roar, so the only thing you need to work on to help you is stamina, which we will work on a later date. However, the Dragonslayer's secret art techniques vary with each Dragonslayer. Your attacks will be different from mine. The only way for you to learn them is to have learned them from Grandine herself." Wendy blinked as Naruto's explanation. "So you can teach me attacks?" she asked. Naruto nodded and suddenly he was tackled by the 5-year-old. The unexpected move caused him to step back a bit from the force. He looked down to see the little girl had wrapped him in a hug. A large smile plastered on her face as her eyes seemed to sparkle. "Thank you, Naruto-sensei." She grinned widely as she looked up at him. Naruto stared at her with an emotionless look as he looked uncomfortable. It had been a long time since anyone hugged him and the re-experiencing it again after so long felt strange to him but also kind of nice in a way as he felt a strange warmth starting to grow. He forced the feeling back down before he nodded in response to her thanks. "You're welcome, now come on. Get off of me and let's go. We have to get back to your training," Wendy nodded. "Yes, Naruto-sensei." She grinned before skipping away. Both Dragonslayers stared at one another. The wind blew through the air scattering numerous amounts of dust. Naruto threw a rock at Wendy, now prepared for the assault, and jumped to the side. Another rock followed and it hit her in the arm. "Ow." She nursed her now bruised limb. "Again," he said. "But it hurts, Naruto-san," she whined. Naruto growled at her, causing her to tense up in fear. "You wanted to be strong, right?" Wendy nodded. "Well, if you want to be strong then get back into position and start dodging these rocks." The blue-haired Dragonslayer nodded before she was suddenly assaulted with projectiles. She ducked under one. Adrenaline began to pump itself through her body, allowing her to react faster. She rolled to the right to avoid another rock, but as she got back up, a third rock embedded itself in her stomach. "Again?" Naruto spoke. Wendy nodded. "Yes, sensei," she wheezed. Naruto pelted rocks at her continuously and continuously she was struck by the hard pieces of earth. "Ah!" She released a loud cry as one struck her calf muscle, causing her to roll on the ground clutching the throbbing area. "Naruto, don't you think this might be a bit too much?" Kurama wondered as he watched the girl seem to already be on the verge of tears. Naruto didn't respond to the question as he stared coldly at Wendy. Again, he spoke. Wendy continued to lay on the ground. Again. Naruto repeated. Wendy remained on the dirt, her teeth gritting together as she nursed her damaged calf. Stand up, you weak Dragonslayer, Naruto roared. Wendy flinched under his harsh tone, but complied. She climbed back to her feet, favoring her right leg. Naruto nodded as he saw the look in her eyes. Her pupils were slitted and her canines bared, her draconian pride not letting her take those words lying down. A dragon's pride indeed. The blonde thought with a mental chuckle as he saw a small sky-blue aura surround her, taking on the image of Grandine. Again, she stated. Naruto smirked and nodded before throwing the projectiles at high speeds. This continued to occur for many a minute. Wendy would dodge a few rocks here and there, but there would always be one that nailed her on her legs, arms or her stomach. Whenever that happened, she released a pained cry before Naruto told to get up and do it again. Lather, rinse and repeat. By the end of the first hour, Wendy was already on her knees. She was covered in dirt, grime and a few bruises on her legs, and another on her stomach. That one was hidden by her dress. Alright, take a 10-minute break, Naruto said as she reached into his backpack and took out one of the few bottles of water he had left. The reason he didn't use it on Kurama was because he wanted to conserve his water supply should they not have been able to find this forested area in the desert. He handed the water bottle to her before sitting down on the ground. Wendy grabbed the water and quickly opened it before downing the clear liquid within it like her life depended on it. When she finished drinking her water, she looked to see Naruto was watching the clouds with a far-off look in his eyes. Is something bothering you, Naruto-sensei? She asked. Naruto shook his head. That is none of your concern, Wendy. So, during this break, I need you to tell me what Grandine has taught you so far. Did she teach you anything else other than her magic? Did she teach you any basic human things like how to read and write? Everything, he said. She looked at the blue-eyed blonde and nodded. Well, Ka-chan taught me a lot of words. She said I was a natural at it and my handwriting was impeccable. She grinned as she managed to make the word impeccable, Sky Dragon. The word is impeccable. Wendy blushed in embarrassment but continued her tale. She also taught me how to do acrobatics, you know, flippy stuff. Kurama and Naruto sweat dropped. We'll have to work on her pronunciation, the two thought. Acrobatics. Kurama corrected her. Wendy blushed in embarrassment once more, damn her 5-year-old brain. She also taught me Tenryu no Hoko and she taught me a few healing spells such as Troya, which heals motion sickness. I have the natural ability to heal people using her magic too, but she said that right now I can only heal cuts and bruises and I'll be able to heal bigger stuff when I get older. She also taught me a few support magic spells like Vernier, which increases speed and agility, Arms, which increases strength, and Armor, which increases defensive strength. Other than that, she didn't teach me much, Naruto nodded. Your mother is indeed skilled and you as well if you were able to learn that many Dragonslayer abilities in such a short amount of time given that you are 5 so she didn't have much time to teach you the other skills such as the more offensive attacks as well as the secret Dragonslayer art abilities. Naruto complimented. Wendy beamed at the praise. Naruto-sensei, so are you going to teach me how to use my other Sky Dragon attacks? Naruto shook his head in a no motion at the question. I will not teach you them. You can bend the air to your will, as you're the daughter of the sky. However, although it is wise to learn magic to defend oneself, you must train your body and mind. Remember, the strength of one's body as well as one's mindset can lead to you unlocking untold amounts of strength in yourself. Wendy stared at Naruto as she saw the look in his eyes. The head of her adoptive mother replaced his own and she blinked. When she reopened her eyes, Grandine's image was gone. The blue-haired girl giggled. Does my explanation amuse you, Sky Dragon? Naruto said with a raised eyebrow. No, it's not that. It's just that. Wendy looked down at the brown earth and traced over one of its man contours. It's just that. Ka-chan told me something almost exactly like that. Naruto remained silent as he saw Wendy become crestfallen. He sighed before standing up to his feet. Stand, Sky Dragon. My name is Wendy, so stop calling me Sky Dragon, Wendy said as she climbed to her feet. She was starting to get annoyed with the boy's title for her. But that is what you are. I am merely granting you a title that served to both be a sign of respect as well as a show of how you are what you are, a Sky Dragon incarnate, and it also serves in giving my student a respectful title for herself, he said. Wendy huffed. Stop with all those big, smart-sounding words. Just call me Wendy. Naruto sighed and scratched the back of his head before he sighed once more. As you wish, Wendy, Naruto said. Kurama chuckled at Naruto. Even when Sakura and Ino aren't around, that boy's will is bent to the will of any female regardless of age. Kurama laughed in his mind. Naruto turned to see Kurama grinning like a Cheshire cat. Whatever you're thinking, stop it or I will plant that face into the dirt. Naruto growled. Kurama growled back. Try it, brat. Naruto growled as he began to butt heads with Kurama, the two pushing against one another in a comical test of strength between the other. Wendy blinked before laughing. Naruto-sensei is funny, Naruto and Kurama blinked at that. Girl, I think you just lost a few of your brain cells from him throwing rocks. Naruto is anything but funny. I concur, I find myself to be lacking in the humor department. He deadpanned. Wendy continued to laugh. Naruto-sensei made a funny face when he was fighting with you, Kurama-chan. Wendy said as tried to mimic Naruto's angry snarl. Kurama blinked at the suffix added to his name, but then began to burst out laughing at the 5-year-old as he took notice of her face, while Naruto merely blinked as he stared at the girl's snarl. Do I really look like that when I get angry? I look freaking ridiculous, he thought. He then shook his head to rid himself of the thoughts before throwing a rock at Kurama to silence his laughing. Ow, damn brat. Don't throw fucking rocks at me. He was then hit in the face with another rock, this time by Wendy to his surprise. Grandine Ka-chan said that was a bad word, Kurama-chan. No saying bad words. She scolded the young exceed. Naruto smiled widely at the blue-haired girl and ruffled her hair playful light. Kurama was releasing a puppy-like whine as he was rubbing his paining muzzle. That really hurt, brat. He mumbled. Excellent shot, Skydrag. He paused when he saw her chocolate brown eyes shift from amused to angry, Wendy. He saw her expression become happy once more. Right, Wendy. I suggest you up your physical speed and strength. After that I will teach you how to fight as well so that way you won't always have to rely on your magic to fight. Also that way you can couple your physical attacks with your magic such as combining a punch with arms and vernier to hit harder and faster. Naruto explained. Wendy nodded. Yes, Naruto-sensei. Naruto nodded before picking up his rocks once more. The sky is the limit, girl. You're going to become a strong Dragonslayer, Kurama said. Wendy blushed lightly at the praise, but flinched when she heard Naruto's commanding tone. Get ready, Sky Dragon, because I will not accept weakness from my student. Naruto growled. Wendy's eyes burned with determination, and slight annoyance due to him calling her Sky Dragon again, and her legs tensed as she saw Naruto throw a rock up and down in his hand. I'm ready. 3 months later Wendy quickly rolled to the side as she saw a rock come at her. She then went into a cartwheel and avoided another. She jumped and caught another rock in her left hand before throwing it back and had it collide with another rock. She then landed on the ground before going into a handstand and bent her arms. She pushed off and soared over 2 other rocks that aimed to collide with her body before twisting in the air and kicked another stone sending it off course. As she landed, she twisted and bent her body at angles one wouldn't have even thought was possible from a young 5-year-old girl. Suddenly a large fireball came at her and the Sky Dragonslayer's eyes widened before taking a deep breath. Tenryu no Hoko. The large tornado blasted out of her mouth and engulfed the sphere of burning oxygen before she turned and glared at its user. Kurama-chan, that was mean, she huffed. The fox costume-wearing Kag grinned widely as he formed 2 more fireballs in his paws. I feel so bad, here let me make it up to you. His grin lengthened, threatening to split his face, before he hurled both fireballs at her. She back flew or twisting and cast a spell. Armor, she called out. Her legs suddenly became encased in a soft green glow and then she lashed out with a vicious spin kick. The armor spell prevented her legs from being burnt as she sliced it in half, reducing the sphere to embers. You're mean, Kurama-chan. However, as she glared at Kurama she quickly reacted as she felt something heading towards her and saw the smirking face of the Apocalypse Dragon's Dragonslayer. Meanie, Naruto ni sensei. Wendy whined as she jumped out of the way of another rock. Over the past 3 months, Wendy had begun to improve. Her speed and agility were much greater than how it was previously, and when she realized just how strong Naruto truly was she began to idolize him, looking up to him as a big brother of the sort. Of course, she never knew if he felt the same towards her due to his fluctuating emotions as he went from emotionless, cold and distant to a bit of prankster and fun in the blink of an eye. Come on, Wendy. Keep your eyes on the target, Kurama is just helping with that, Naruto said. The blue-haired girl scratched her head as she felt the remnants of searing heat from Kurama's fireball as she ducked beneath it. You're both mean to me, she huffed before catching a rock and throwing it at Kurama, nailing him in the muzzle. The flying cat's head snapped back and he spiraled to the ground. Mayday, mayday, I'm going down. He over-exaggerated his descent before a small explosion of fire erupted around him as he landed. Naruto and Wendy paused in their exercise and watched the small fire that was Kurama. The flames died down to reveal an angry Kurama and the 2 Dragonslayers merely blinked at him. You see me burning in flames and you say nothing? You're both dead to me, he howled. Naruto blinked before poking Kurama's forehead. You're impervious to fire, stupid furball, Naruto said with a small smirk before turning to Wendy. Wendy, you're good enough in your speed and agility. All that's left is for you to train yourself in that area. Now for you to work on your fighting skills, Naruto said as walked towards the small girl. Wendy nodded before dusting herself off. Her previously pure pink dress was now stained with dirt, grime and small drops of blood from when Naruto accidentally hit her in the face with a rock during one of his torture-say training exercises. Naruto ni sensei? Wendy spoke as she saw Naruto stretch his muscles for his teachings. Yes, Sky Dragon? He spoke that nickname to her just to see the annoyance on her face. Acknowledgia always called him a weak human for the fun of it, and he usually retorted with calling the dragon an overgrown garden snake. Naruto chuckled at the memory before looking down at Wendy's annoyed face. He ruffled her hair, causing her to look up at him, brown eyes still showing annoyance. Am I stronger? Can I hear what happened to Grandine Ka-chan? She asked. Naruto suddenly became emotionless at the question. Yes, you are stronger, but you are still not going to hear what happened to Grandine, young Dragonslayer. I have told you countless times. I am bound by oath to not say anything, Naruto said. Can't you make an exception? She asked. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose. She was stubborn and her resolve was admirable, but it was getting annoying for the Apocalypse Dragonslayer. No, he said coldly. Wendy frowned. Come on, brat. Buck up, and besides, fighting training is now. Kurama said as he changed into his fox form. A single crimson tail swished behind him. Kurama always felt a bit more comfortable in his kitsune form, but when he first showed it Wendy she got really frightened and ended up sending him flying into a tree when she used arms and punched him in the muzzle, so he had kept his transformations to a minimum should that event be repetitive. Alright, Wendy. Show me the stances that you have learned, Naruto ordered. Wendy nodded. She went into a basic fighting stance. She had her right leg in front of her left. She was crouched down and her arms were raised as if she were about to box, but her hands were positioned so that her fingers pointed away from her and her sharp claw-like nails faced her imaginary opponent. She then shifted her weight to her right leg and lashed out with a strong kick with her right leg. As she dropped the leg, she rotated and swung a spin kick. As her foot touched the ground she made various slashing motions with her claws, moving forward with each slash, before going into a handstand and spun on her hands. However, she was unable to support her weight for long and came crashing down on the ground. Naruto's eyes looked amused as he saw her go with the flow, and she used her fall to allow her to go into a sweep kick before performing a windmill and allowed herself to come back onto her feet. She then lashed out with 2 straight kicks and then went into a handstand, kicking again and allowed her body to fall forwards. She rolled on the dirt-covered ground before using the momentum of her roll to go back onto her feet. She then slashed with her sharp nails multiple times before performing a no-handed cartwheel. However, she fell due to her slowing down at the peak of her cartwheel. However, as she fell, she stretched out her arms and quickly used them to cushion her fall and then performed a cat spring, pushing herself to her feet and performed a right hook. A left hook followed after before she rotated at a 90-degree angle and slammed her elbow into her imaginary opponent. She then rotated again so that she was no facing backwards and used her other elbow. She quickly turned around once more before performing 2 quick jabs and then followed with an uppercut. She jumped with the uppercut and used a flying knee attack and fired another punch. She then performed a series of palm strikes before she spun in a 360-degree angle, and used the momentum to perform a double palm strike. She then finished off her imaginary battle by taking deep breath and ending her combination of attacks with a Tenryu no Hoko. The attack shredded a few trees as she had used a more concentrated amount of air rather than magic so that it would be faster and would have more cutting power. A thing Naruto taught her with respect to wind. She panted before looking at her blue-eyed teacher. Did I do good, Naruto ni sensei? Naruto nodded. In the beginning, when you shifted your weight to go into that first kick, you nearly lost your balance. We'll have to work on that. You're also going to have work on the spin kick when you go into a handstand and no-handed cartwheel, seeing as how you fell. Your slashes require more speed as any opponent would have easily killed you by blocking them and counter-attacking, and your cat spring needs some improvement as you didn't get up quickly enough. He said. Wendy's cheeks burned with embarrassment as Naruto pointed out her many faults, but Naruto continued. Though I am impressed with how you went with the flow. You used your falls to your advantage, allowing you to perform an unexpected move, which is a good thing as it will keep the opponent on edge, and you wouldn't expect those kinds of moves from you, and you therefore are able to get in a few strikes. Your elbow strikes were strong, just like they should be. The elbow is one of the hardest joints, along with your knee. Those two would bring great amounts of pain to your enemies. Naruto and Wendy sported matching grins at that image. Palm strikes, now due to your feminine build. You need more agility in order to use those, so Kurama and I will continue with the rock exercise to help you with that, but instead of dodging you will be deflecting them with your palms. Also, I commend you on the finish. An ending well fit for you, Sky Dragon. Wendy blushed at the praise before glaring at the older Dragonslayer. Naruto ni sensei, I told you, just call me Wendy. She whined. Naruto snickered at her expression, and motioned for her to come over. She ran up to him only to get jabbed in the forehead with index and middle fingers. Maybe, he replied. Wendy rubbed her painting forehead before poking Naruto's stomach. Meanie, Naruto ni. So are you going to teach me any new fighting moves? She asked, bouncing up and down like a squirrel with a sugar rush. Naruto patted her head. Of course. I'm not going to let my sister dragon be some weakling like any of those other mages. Wendy's eyes widened as he had called her sister, Even though the context of the words used was all wrong, she still felt like Naruto saw her as such. Now then, what I'm going to show you now is to go in combination with what you already know. Your current set of moves, the ones you just performed, they are based mainly on your light frame and thus you are able to use them to their highest potential as you would be able to perform the move swiftly. Now this set of moves, are moves which are basically, hit and run, moves. You hit, dodge, hit again, lather, rinse and repeat. Understood? Wendy nodded. Are you going to combat Kurama-chan? He seems to be rather excited given his vigorous leaping. In the months she was under Naruto's tutelage, she had also expanded her verbal dictionary and Naruto helped her with writing them out in order for her to learn them quicker as it was an effective test in terms of learning new words and it also helped with Wendy's writing ability which was already above standard. She was a bright girl, Naruto had quickly realized and she picked up things quickly. Much like I did with Tusan, he thought with a small smile. Insert music. Naruto Shippuden reverse situation. Naruto turned to Kurama and nodded. Kurama's body glowed a red color for a moment. His kitsune body suddenly began to release loud snaps and cracks as his bones lengthened and retracted to various lengths. Finally, the transformation was complete and there now stood a bipedal Kurama. His arms were longer than a human's, ending just above his hips. His hand-like paws were now more human-like, but they were lengthier and his black claws were now like fingernails. His legs were also long, the muscles lean instead of large. This showed that Kurama's form was much faster than his other two forms. He retained his single tail, but that soon changed as two more sprouted out of his rear. His feet were still paws so his ankles were bent at an angle. 3 tails, Kurama? Naruto asked. You know you're already faster than 2. This is to keep things even and besides in this form my strength decreases since it mainly helps me move faster than when I'm in pure kitsune form. Kurama's crimson eyes stared into Naruto's cerulean ones. The blonde nodded. True, now Wendy. Watch carefully, he said. The blue-haired girl nodded to her brother. Naruto and Kurama faced each other before nodding. They took off in bursts of speed. Naruto and Kurama clashed their fists together causing a small shockwave to result at the point of contact. The two copied each other's attacks for a few moments. Fist met fist and leg met leg in a furious dance of destruction. A staccato of small booms followed each collision. The two then came to a stalemate as they crashed their fists against one another, their arm muscles tensing in an effort to overpower the other. Naruto quickly withdrew his fist causing Kurama to stumble forward due to the lack of a resisting force and was met with a kick to the face. However, Kurama countered with one of his tails, but Naruto had already jumped away. The Dragonslayer slashed with his sharp, claw-like nails and Kurama dodged it only for Naruto to have rolled to the side as the fox was about to counter with a spin kick. Naruto then grabbed the kitsune's outstretched leg and threw him into a tree before running towards the red-furred fox and lashed out with a flying kick. So close. The kitsune commented with a mischievous grin. Kurama grabbed the leg with one of his tails before slamming Naruto into the ground, but Kurama quickly followed up by jumping and slamming both of his paw-like feet into Naruto's stomach. The blonde released a gasp as the wind was knocked out of his lungs. Kurama then raised his fist, but Naruto blocked the punch with his left arm before releasing a pulse of wind from his body. The pulse set Kurama off of him and allowed him to climb back to his feet. Kurama flipped in the air and planted his feet against the trunk of a tree before pushing off and sent a fireball at Naruto. Naruto quickly ducked beneath the attack and slammed an uppercut to Kurama's gut, but the fox quickly recovered and bit down on Naruto's arm. The coppery-tasting liquid touched his tongue and Kurama smirked before letting go and kicked Naruto in the face before slamming 2 tails down on Naruto's body. Naruto crossed his arms in front of him and blocked the blow before grabbing Kurama's tails. With a loud cry, Naruto swung the 3-tailed fox over his head and slammed him down on the ground. Naruto then jumped away as Kurama had fired a ball of burning oxygen at him. He countered by sending a blast of wind. Kurama vanished in a blur of speed, avoiding the wind attack before appearing in front of Naruto. The kitsune fired off a kick to the chest and the attack sent Naruto skidding backwards. The blonde quickly ducked beneath the fireball that followed after before racing towards Kurama and slammed a fist into his gut. He dodged the followed claw swipe before twisting and slamming his elbow into his ribs. Kurama winced and lashed out with 2 tails. Naruto jumped over them and was about to counter with Fudon Daitappa, only for the third to appear above him. The tail became engulfed in a storm of fire and the fiery whip that was Kurama's tail crashed down on Naruto. Luckily, Naruto had formed a wind shield in front of him and was able to take the attack head-on. The dust cloud cleared and revealed the blonde was gone. Kurama's ears twitched before ducking beneath a kick that would have really hurt had it connected with his cheek. He countered with a sweep kick, but Naruto jumped over it and slammed a fist down on Kurama's skull. The fox growled in pain, but kicked Naruto in the stomach sending him soaring. Naruto and Kurama then let loose a wind bullet and fireball, respectively, and caused a small explosion. The two rushed through the resulting smoke cloud and crashed their limbs together once more. Kurama blocked a kick to his head, but Naruto quickly jumped back to avoid a claw swipe. Kurama slashed upwards, but Naruto leaned back so that his upper body was now parallel to the ground. He then went into a backhand spring before rushing Kurama and slammed his head into the fox's stomach. Kurama grabbed the blonde's head and twisted him so that the boy's whole body spun and he was slammed into the ground. Kurama then did a cartwheel so that he straddled Naruto and began to rapidly punch the boy's face. However, Naruto opened his mouth and released a wind dragon from his mouth. The attack sent Kurama skyward. The three-tailed fox flipped in the air and began to rain fireballs down upon Naruto. Naruto flipped and twisted, performing a series of acrobatic moves to avoid the attacks. Kurama then enveloped himself in fire and dove down towards Naruto at a fast speed. "Fire rocket!" Kurama yelled. Naruto quickly slammed his palms out in front of him. "Futon! K's no tate, wind style, windshield," he cried out. A circular-shaped shield of rotating wind formed in front of Naruto. Kurama crashed into the shield, causing it to erupt into flames. The resulting explosion sent Naruto skidding backwards. Naruto then vanished into the wind and appeared behind Kurama and aimed a kick to his spine. Kurama back-flipped over the kick and aimed one of his own for Naruto. However, Naruto leaned back and avoided the attack. He then jumped back to gain some distance between the two of them. "You gotten better, brat," Kurama grinned. "I could say the same to you, fluffball." Naruto grinned back. Wendy was in utter shock at just how completely awesome this battle was. Naruto ni is so cool. Kurama-chan could do that with fire. Those some of the many thoughts that were going through moment as she saw the two continue to duke it out. Naruto and Kurama rushed each other and Kurama's tails burst into flames before racing towards Naruto. All three rear appendages aimed to spear Naruto, but as the two neared each other, Naruto vanished into the wind in a blur of speed. Kurama's crimson eyes widened as he saw Naruto appear above him. Naruto held out his hand. Magic energy swirled to life before condensing into a single sphere of compact, rotating energy. "Energy make! Rasengan!" he yelled as he slammed the attack down on Kurama, causing a large crater to form. Kurama howled in pain as the attack drilled into his flesh and burned it. Naruto ended the attack before jumping away. "Do you know how many times you fell for that tactic?" Naruto said with a large grin. Suddenly Kurama burst into flame, revealing nothing in the crater. "Fire clone!" he gasped mentally. He then noticed the small hole where Kurama's clone body was. The blonde's eyes widened before hearing the ground beneath him crack. "Shit!" he thought before Kurama's red-furred fist crashed into his chin, sending him flipping through the air. The three-tailed fox then flew out of the hole before breathing a tongue of flame. The orange and yellow stream of burning oxygen raced towards Naruto, but the Dragonslayer of Agnologia growled before clapping his hands together. His pupils became slitted and his fangs bared as he took a deep breath. "Mokashiryu no Hoko!" He released the attack and both attacks collided in an epic explosion of energy and flame and caused the earth itself to rip apart. Trees creaked from the winds from the shockwave and birds flew from their trees to escape being hurt from the explosion. Wendy was comically blown away before slamming face first into a tree. "Ouchie," she thought. When the smoke cloud died down, Naruto and Kurama took deep breaths to calm their heart rates before turning to Wendy, who had an amusing look of surprise on her face as she peeled herself from the tree bark. "Dodge and counter, remember that," Naruto said as he walked towards the young girl. Wendy gawked at how he could be so calm after causing so much destruction. "Naruto ni, you caused damage on a wide scale and that's all you can say?" Naruto turned back and scratched his cheek as he observed the destruction he and Kurama caused. "I've done worse." Wendy face faulted. "Alright, get ready." He got into a fighting stance. Wendy gulped as she looked at the blonde. B-B bud. If I'm fighting you, I'll get hurt. I was barely able to keep up with you and Kurama-chan," Wendy said. Naruto grabbed Wendy by the back of her dress collar and hoisted her up much to her protest. "Wendy, you're going to get hurt if you fight. I've been fighting for a long time so I'm used to it, but you aren't. This is why I'm having you fight me. You will get hurt and then you will be able to gain a tolerance for pain. With that comes the ability to recover quicker and strike back," he said. The blue-haired girl nodded to the blonde, but she still gulped out of nervousness at fighting her Ni-sensei. She slid into the fighting stance, but paused before walking up to her Ni-sensei. Naruto looked confused as she pulled back his torn sleeve to reveal the bloody tissue where Kurama had bitten him. She then placed her hands on the wound. A sky-blue-colored aura surrounded her hands before it was expelled as a haze. The flesh and skin quickly regenerated before she rolled back the sleeve and then began to heal his other wounds. After he was healed, she retreated with a small smile on her face. "All better," she grinned. Naruto sighed. She was too compassionate for her own good. It was her strength, but also her weakness. Just like him and his dragon pride, but that was one of the things he secretly liked about her. Wendy then slipped into the fighting stance she formed earlier, Naruto forming the same stance. "You are permitted to use magic to help you," he stated. Wendy's eyes filled with relief at that notification before taking off. Vernier. She took off in a burst of speed, leaving cloud of dust in her wake. She appeared to Naruto's side. Legs swung back at the ready. Arms. She allowed the spell to strengthen her legs and she let loose a spin kick to the side of his skull. Naruto ducked beneath the attack and then jumped away as Wendy's fist followed after. She ran forward, using straight kick to the stomach. Naruto blocked the attack with a simple raise of his leg, catching the attack with his tibia. Being shorter, the 5-year-old could only aim for the legs and stomach when she jumped. Naruto had compensated for this, saying she would win their sparring training exercises if she was able to get a hit on his skull. For that purpose, Wendy had worked harder to improve her jumping prowess. Wendy then pushed off of his leg and back flipped before landing on the ground and vanished in a blur of speed as she used Vernier. She let loose a punch to the calf, but Naruto sidestepped it before kicking her in the back. Wendy stumbled forward, but rolled with the blow before climbing back to her feet. She jumped back as Naruto slammed his fist down on her previous position, causing small crack to form from the force of the attack. She kicked his arm, causing him to fall forward as he was merely hunched over. As Naruto fell, the Sky Dragonslayer jumped and flipped in the air, crashing an axe kick down on him, but Naruto raised his arm and blocked the attack. Wendy then used the force from Naruto's block to jump and twist over him. She landed on her feet behind Naruto and took a deep breath. Tenryu no Hoko. Naruto spun around and raised his right leg straight up as a small twister formed around his leg. Futon. Kuuki Keita, wind style. Aircutter. Naruto moved his leg in a downward motion and a magic seal formed before a crescent-shaped blast of wind flew from his leg. The attack sliced Wendy's roar completely in half, but Wendy had used the attack as a distraction and Naruto raised his arm as Wendy appeared next to him, a straight kick aimed for his skull. "Good, you're getting better with distraction tactics," he complimented before grabbing her leg. "But that's not good enough," he added coldly. Wendy's eyes widened as Naruto slammed her down on the ground. He picked her up again and slammed her down. This action repeated twice more before he flung her away. Wendy spun in the air, but she managed to right herself before jumping and flipping in the air. Air currents swirled near her tailbone as she completed the forward rotation. Tenryu no Shippo Kougeki, Sky Dragon's tail strike. She roared. The whip-like appendage of pure wind came down on Naruto. It was weaker and smaller due to her now accessing the attack, but the blonde Dragonslayer smirked as he cut the tail apart with a wind blade before grabbing the still descending Wendy by the throat and choke slammed her. He let her go, only for her to perform a cat spring. She smirked as her feet made contact with his stomach, and since they were powered by her arm's spell, the attack had caused Naruto to be sent skidding backwards. She saw her chance and leapt at him. A flurry of blows rained down upon the blonde Dragonslayer, who smirked at his student. Tenryu no Tekken, Sky Dragon's iron fist. She let loose a strong punch to Naruto's abdomen, but the boy jumped back, but he was sent skidding from the wind blasting side effect of the attack. She then raised her arms over her head, crossing them in an X shape. Wind spiraled around her hands, taking the shape of sharp claws. Tenryu no Kiru Tsume, Sky Dragon's slicing talons. He dodged every single attack before he one of her arms that aimed for his ribs. He then lifted her up and dropped her before raising his knee, planting it in her stomach before allowing her to fall to the ground as her claws vanished. Naruto growled softly at the damaged girl. Wendy coughed as Naruto helped her to her feet. She fell forward as she was now weak in the knees, but Naruto caught her and picked her up, bridal style. "Did I do good?" she asked. Naruto nodded. "You pickly. I think that fighting style suits you, but variety does help in a fight. I commend you on that cat spring. Actually got a good hit on me, but that was just luck. I wasn't really expecting you to recover so quickly," he said as he headed for their campsite. "You're turning into quite the Dragonslayer, Wendy. You've already gotten the Tenryu no Shippo Kougeki down, but it still needs to be stronger. Of course, that strength will come with age." Wendy nodded before falling unconscious as the force of Naruto's blows finally caught up to her. Kurama, now in full kitsune form, ran up alongside Naruto before reducing to a walking pace. The kitsune looked up at the unconscious blue-haired girl and smirked. "She's learning quick." "She is," Naruto said with a small smile before he frowned seeing Kurama smirking at him, though she has much to learn still. "Oh come on, Naruto. Don't be like that. You and I both know you're proud of her to have come this far in just 3 months. Kurama paused. 3 months that we've been in this damn forest. Though it's weird that we're still stuck in this shitty place, Kurama said. Naruto nodded. "Well, we haven't moved from our new campsite, that's probably why," Naruto said turning to Kurama. "Yeah, but while you were training Wendy I had flown up to do a bit of scouting and apparently the forest is much larger than it appears to be. It'd take us a few days to clear it if we flew over it, even with max speed. That is troubling. After we drop Wendy off at the campsite and rest a little, We'll fly up and take a look. Sounds like a plan. Unknown forest Naruto's campsite. Naruto rested the young girl in the sleeping bag he had provided for her beforehand. He watched the Sky Dragonslayer's face as she slept peacefully before he wiped away a few patches of dirt that formed on her cute face. He and Kurama then took a little rest, drinking a bit of water from the nearby river and refilling their water bottles. Naruto pulled out 2 of 3 dead rabbits he had caught and had Kurama cook them. Naruto, I'm curious. Why did you beat down on Wendy so badly? She's only 5 years old, Kurama said. Naruto shook his head. She's the child of a dragon. She can take it. Besides, I told her I would be tough on her. She's pulled through rather well these past months, he answered. Kurama bit into his rabbit meat to vent the anger he felt towards Naruto's answers. Dragon this, dragon that. She's a child, Naruto. Think about the human part of her, Kurama roared. Naruto turned to the fox with a cold look. Do not lecture me, furball. I know what I'm doing. Besides, she's not really 5 years old, Naruto said. Kurama growled. So she was placed in a pocket dimension like this, so what? Her body is still at 5 years old. She's still frail, Naruto. Naruto didn't answer the fox when he finished. Instead he just turned to look at Wendy again as he pondered Kurama's words. Maybe he did have a point. Despite how much time Wendy spent in the pocket dimension, her body was still a child's. Besides whatever training she did with Grandine, she was basically just a little girl who had her limits, which he seemed to always make her reach during their training. Naruto shook his head and decided to think more on the matter later as he kept eating his meal. Once their meal was done, they cleaned themselves and stood up. With that, the blonde turned to his red-eyed exceed. Kurama reverted to his costumed cat form and nodded. Era! He cried. A pair of white, angel-like wings sprouted of his back and Naruto used futon. Tobu. The two took to the skies and hovered over the forest's canopy before taking off. Naruto watched over the trees, and it was then that he noticed just how large the forest was. Naruto then spied another river which branched off from the path that his campsite's river took. A rocky pathway bordered both the river and the forest. Naruto then landed there, Kurama following. The two began to sniff the air before they caught the scent of a mage. There's magic power coming from that direction, Kurama said, pointing up the river. Naruto nodded. Let's go. He began to sprint as the fox-costumed feline flew alongside him. After a few minutes of running, flying, the two paused when they came across a small village-like area. It looked similar to a village one might find relating to North American Indian tribes. The village was made up of many Indian-styled tents. Numerous pictures of animals such as the wolf, hawk and bison were etched into the fabric to make the tents. Naruto and Kurama walked through the village before coming across the scent of the magic they had found earlier. This must be where the mage is, Kurama said. You are indeed the captain of stating out the obvious. Naruto deadpanned, causing Kurama to shoot a fireball at him. Naruto avoided it before walking forwards, Kurama's fuming form flying next to him. The blonde opened the tent and the two viewed the inside. It was rather spacious, with everything one would need for living in such a secluded area. There was a kitchen, a few rooms that were probably bedroom areas, as well as a place which had the picture of a man on what looked to be a chair. Bathroom came to the minds of the Dragonslayer and Exceed. Suddenly, they heard the sound of feet against the ground. They turned and saw an old man with a stern-looking face. He had a white beard and mustache which all seemed to be connected to his sideburns and eyebrows. His head looked to be disproportionate to his body, it being larger. Though, this was probably due to his body being thin and lacking much muscle and/or fat. The old man's clothes consisted only of a gray male skirt of some kind worn over a pair of dark purple pants. He was barefoot, but a pair of black sandals near to where he was standing showed that he wore shoes. He wore no shirt, and a necklace of white teeth was worn around his neck. Atop his head was a crown of feathers of some sort, one that someone might find upon the chief of the Native American tribes. There was a golden ring or band on each bicep, and his forearms were wrapped in numerous bandages. In the center of his forehead was red tattoo that looked like a circle with an arc on either side of the circle. Who are you two? The old man asked as he suddenly picked up a staff that was leaning up against the wall. He pointed it at the two of them. You are the magic energy we've been feeling? It's quite large for one as elderly as you, Naruto said. Are you calling me old? The man asked. No, I called you elderly, Naruto said. Kurama turned to the boy, a sweat drop on the back of his head. They mean the same thing, you idiot. Really? Naruto asked. The old man gaped when he saw the flying cat before him, but was even more surprised when it started to talk. That cat is talking. The old man gaped, pointing a wrinkled, bony finger at the cat. Didn't your mother ever tell you not to point? Kurama growled. The old man gulped as he saw the rage in the feline's red eyes, but then his gaze hardened. What are you doing in my village? The old man asked. We were observing the forest and we came across a strong magic power. We followed it and came here, and seeing as you're the only occupant of this village, it would obviously have to be you. Naruto explained. So would you mind if I asked why you're living alone in the middle of nowhere? The old man raised a hand. Please, call me Rubol. I am part of an ancient civilization that has long since died out. I am its sole surviving member. Rubol said. Naruto didn't pry any further on the topic. Everyone was entitled to their secrets. So, are you a member of a guild? Naruto asked. Rubol looked confused. No, why? Because I've been traveling with a little girl. She is only 5 years old and I fear my travels may put her in the path of dangers I will not be able to protect all of us from, even if we are both there to help her. Naruto said, I was looking for a place to watch over her, keep her safe. But sadly, this place does not seem safe. Especially basic and light magic surrounding you. Rubol's eyes widened. How did you? Naruto didn't reply as he continued to glare at the elderly man. My 2-san told me of a legendary magic that was around during the early days of Earthland. A tribe known as the Nervit, which lived 400 years ago, was said to have made a magic that was able to make the darkness go away and replace it with light. However, balance was meant to exist, and so whenever darkness became light, light had become darkness and the members of the Nervit were changed and ended up killing each other off from the negative emotions they felt. Naruto said. Your father is well informed on this information. Rubol said with a serious tone. What do you know of my people and how did you know I was one of them? I never knew, I merely had a suspicion of your being a Nervit due to the fact that a majority of this village doesn't really exist and is an illusion. Naruto said. Rubol looked shocked. My illusion magic is of the highest level. How did you see through it? Naruto looked at Rubol and closed his eyes. Mokashiryu no Byakugan, Apocalypse Dragon's all-seeing white eye, Naruto whispered before snapping his eyes open, revealing the pure white eyes of his adoptive father. Rubol took a step back in shock and fear. Those eyes. There's no way he has a connection that dragon. It's not possible, Rubol thought. These eyes cannot be fooled. In fact, you are trying very hard to remain attached to this world for some reason, as you should be dead. Your organs are dying and yet you look very young for a man of over 100 years of age. These do not only see through illusions alone. You're a kind, caring man. You would put your life on the line for those you care about, but with them all gone you are merely surviving with the sadness and regret of not being able to help your fellow Nervit during the day your tribe was wiped out. Rubol remained silent as he watched Naruto. You seem to have figured me out with just a glance, son of a dragon, Rubol said. Naruto smirked. You had your suspicions as well, I see. You merely confirmed it. There is only dragon I know of which those kind of eyes. Son of Agnologia. Rubol replied. Naruto nodded before a magic seal appeared in the right eye of the Mokashiryu no Byakugan. A trail of light extended from the eye before a small hologram of Wendy was shown in front of Rubol. This was the exact same ability that Agnologia had used when he had revealed the image of his biological parents to him. Memory projection. Naruto then cut off the flow of Dragonslayer magic to his eyes and the hologram vanished. The white shine in his eyes died down and his blue iris returned in a blink. So listen here, Gigi, I'll strike a deal with you. You watch over the little girl when I bring her here and I will not reveal your secret to anyone whom I do not believe should know the information. Deal? Naruto held out his hand for Rubol to shake. The Nervit elder gritted his teeth. All that for the sake of a little girl. She must be precious to him, he thought. The Nervit sighed before nodding. Alright, I'll look after the girl when you return to this place. Rubol surrendered the boy's demand. Naruto nodded before Kurama flew next to him and quietly whispered in his ear. He does know that you have no to tell this information to, right? Kurama said. It's implied. No, he deadpanned. Kurama chuckled before patting the boy's head. Great job, brat. You're getting more cunning every day. Naruto smirked at the compliment before looking back at Rubol. So, boy. Do you mind telling me your name and the girl's name so that way I will know who you all are when you return? Rubol asked. It's so easy to copy appearances these days. A smart question, Nervit-san. Rubol, just call me Rubol. The old man said with a grandfatherly smile. Naruto nodded, however. Just as he was about to speak again, Naruto froze as he felt dread wash over him. He looked at the elderly man and frowned. Wendy. Naruto and Kurama thought. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze is my name. Now I have to go now, something's happened. Naruto grabbed Kurama and then channeled wind magic energy into his feet. Futon. Shunpo no Kazejin. Naruto and Kurama then vanished into the wind, causing Rubol to stare at the spot in shock. Wind magic and such amazing control of it for one so young. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, I look forward to your return. Unknown Forest. Naruto's campsite. Wendy yawned as she woke up from her nap. She looked around and found herself in their campsite. Over the months, the three had been constantly moving from one area to another as an effort to try and find a way out of the literal jungle, as well as find new areas for Wendy to train so as to aid her adaptation skills. Naruto ni sensei, she called out as she got out of the sleeping bag. Kurama-chan? The little girl glanced around the campsite as they were nowhere in sight. Must have went hunting for dinner then? She hypothesized. She took a deep breath as she did a few stretches to loosen her taut muscles. Once that was done, she saw a cooked rabbit roasting over a small fire. Looks like they knew she would wake up while they were gone. Wendy smiled as she dug into the rabbit meat. Once she finished eating, she got up and ate a bit of the air. I wonder where Naruto ni went. The Sky Dragonslayer wondered. She then decided to try and find him. No one had ever even found their campsite before, so it was safe for her to just leave. She took a deep inhalation of air through her nose. Her pupils became slitted as she drew upon her draconian aspects. Naruto's and Kurama's scents then reached her sensory organ as she differentiated it among the different smells of the forest. She took off, skipping through the forest as if it were her own backyard, which is what it was in a sense. She jumped over a large tree root before leaping and grabbing an outstretched tree branch. She used the forward motion to allow herself to swing up onto its surface before leaping up onto the higher branches. After a few more leaps, she reached the top of the tree. Her head poked out of the cluster of leaves and she viewed the forest. She sniffed the air once more. With the lack of tree obstructing her sense of smell, she was able to get better fix on his and Kurama's positions. Once she caught wind of them, she dropped down, rolling on the grass-covered ground so that she wouldn't hurt herself with the fall. As she dusted herself off, she ran for a few minutes, but then paused. She quickly ducked behind a tree as she sniffed the air. Malicious magic power met her nostrils and she glanced out from behind the tree. She kept her heart rate and breathing calm as she watched as 5 individuals walked out of the brush. 4 of them looked around the area as if they were actually looking for something, while the 5th appeared to be sleeping atop a. Is that a flying carpet? Wendy thought. She's supposed to be around here. One of the figures spoke. He was a slim boy of average height. He appeared to be at least 1 year older than Naruto, with spiky crimson hair which was styled upwards, aside from a tuft covering his forehead and 2 bangs framing his face. He had seemingly snake-like features, a rather flat nose and prominent canine teeth. He also sported a simple circular earring on his left ear. His outfit consisted of an elaborated whitish coat with purple inners and cuffs intricately decorated by silver-colored motifs, and many studs lined up the chest, the high collar and the sleeves, which have armbands seemingly made of metal around them above Cobra's elbows. Below it he wears a dark shirt, and he also sports a pair of crimson pants apparently composed of leather held up by a studded belt, with more similar belts circling diagonally the upper parts of his legs, and simple brown shoes. Are you sure? You're rather slow sometimes when it comes to finding things, even with your listening magic. A second male voice spoke. The second figure was a taller boy of at least had black and blonde hair in which the blonde hairs were styled into a mohawk. His eyebrows were rather long, protruding past the skull by quite a few inches. They were also blonde. He had an even skin tone and wore a pair of gray sunglasses with black lenses. On his chin was some sort of chin guard of some sort which appeared to extend from or to his sunglasses. He wore a red and white racing suit and blue and white running shoes. He was constantly moving his legs as if running in place. Shut up, racer, Cobra, just hurry up and find whoever it is Master was looking for. Is she here? This voice was feminine. Wendy spied the source of the voice and found it to be the lone female in the group. She had white hair that framed her face and reached just past her chin. A few strands of her hair had been made into a makeshift halo shape. She wore a pair of white boots and seemed to have a pair of large, feathery, white wings extending out of her body which reminded the Sky Dragonslayer of Kurama's wings. Her dress, which was pure white and made entirely of feathers, had a V-shaped split in it revealing a majority of her rather sizable bust. Wendy frowned as she looked down at her chest. Why can't I have a big chest like her, she thought. Yeah, whatever angel. I'm sure Kuberos will find her before Hot Eye can. Cobra said with a smirk as he pointed at a feminine-looking male. He looked to be around 17 years old and had long, flowing orange hair. His face was rather angular and had many lines on it making it look like he was made of rock. He had bright blue eyes and long eyelashes, feminine-looking lips and a flat nose. He wore a loose black shirt, with light sleeves adorned by a series of dark roms, a large, white collar closed on the front going down to cover his shoulders and a sash tied around his waist visible under it, and simple light pants tucked inside light boots, with the parts circling his calves being reminiscent of leg warmers. Circling the young feminine male's neck was a necklace of brown beads. Tucked beneath his left arm was a red and yellow book. Transvestite? Wendy thought as she looked at the person known as Hot Eye. Please, Midnight's asleep and even he could be able to find the girl faster than your little snake. Angel snapped. Cobra hissed at the girl. Wendy continued to watch, however she suddenly felt a presence behind her and gasped when she saw a large purple anaconda with shining green eyes. It also had an eggshell white belly. The snake lunged and Wendy screamed. Oh yeah? Suddenly a scream met all of their ears. The one on the flying carpet, a 13-year-old boy with a lean body structure, black spiky hair on the top, and longer, straighter white hair on the bottom. He had a set of 5 maroon beads on the left strand of his hair. He wore a black leather vest with white fur-like material on the collar and sleeves. He also wore a white armlet around his right bicep, and a black choker around his neck. He wore a pair of yellow trousers with black designs on them, and burgundy boots. There were spiked bracelets on his wrists and skull earrings on his ears. Though his head was bent down, Wendy managed to catch sight of the boy wearing plum-colored lipstick. The way his body reacted to her scream told her that he seemed to remain asleep despite the loud sound. Cobra grinned at Angel as he saw Kubero's, his pet snake, slither up to his with Wendy entrapped. Kubero's tail was wrapped firmly around the girl's body, typing down both her hands and legs. "Let me go, fucking bastards," the 5-year-old growled using some coarse language she had heard Kurama say when he fought with Naruto. Oh, such a foul mouth for one so young. Him, blue hair, brown eyes, prominent canines. "We got her." Cobra spoke with a feral grin. Kubero's hissed as it was given a pat on the head for a job well done. "Are you sure? It's just a little girl?" Racer asked. "Positive." Master's description was very specific. Angel said as she watched the struggling Dragonslayer. "Alright, now that we've found the Sky Dragonslayer, we can deliver her to Master and he will then use her great magic power to transfer it into ourselves and make ourselves much stronger. Though I wonder how he knew about her being in this forest," Hot-Eye mused. "Who cares, Richard, we got her, let's g." Cobra was interrupted when a violent windstorm filled the area they were in. Insert music. Fairy Tale Dragonslayer. Cobra looked to see Kubero's tail suddenly get sliced off. The snake released a hiss in pain as blood poured from the point where its tail was cut. Then they saw 2 figures drop down in front of Wendy. "Who the fucking hell are you, bastard? How dare you interrupt our mission for our master?" Cobra hissed. Kubero's joined in with the hissing as the snake's tail suddenly began to regenerate at a rapid pace. "Are you alright, Sky Dragon?" Wendy nodded. "Aha," she replied. "Thanks for coming for me, Naruto ni." She grinned. Naruto nodded as his reply. Naruto quickly grabbed the young girl and placed her in a tree far above the soon-to-be battleground before vanishing and reappearing next to Kurama. "You dare to touch my student with your filthy reptile?" Naruto growled. Angel, Cobra, Hot-Eye and Racer suddenly flinched as they felt a spike in the blonde's magic power. The black-haired boy on the magic carpet didn't respond at all. "Don't call Kubero's filthy, you little brat." Cobra lunged with a punch, but Naruto caught the attack, redirected it and then slammed a strong knee to Cobra's stomach. He then twisted and sent a strong upward kick to the chin. Naruto leapt up after him and grabbed him by his ankles and flipped to build momentum before slamming the older boy on the ground, causing a small crater to form from the impact. Naruto leapt into the air as he avoided Kubero's. Kubero's had bared his fangs and leapt at Naruto, but due to the blonde's dodge it continued straight towards the crimson-eyed Exceed. The costumed cat's arm suddenly extended as if it were made of rubber and then slammed down on Kubero's neck, sending the violet serpent to the ground. He then extended his arm so that the snake would slam into its master. He then kept pushing as he caused both enemies to carve a trough in the earth and ended the pushing force when he slammed them into a tree and caused the bark to break from the impact. Cobra and Kubero's groaned and hissed as they rose back up. "He is strong for such a young boy," Hot-Eye complimented. "Well, he's the way. We'll have to get through this thing as fast as we can." Racer's legs began to move at rapid speeds. Naruto and Kurama growled at the 5 before them. "You low-life humans. How dare you touch that child? I'll make sure your blood spills on this very ground." Wendy smiled widely at how fiercely Naruto was acting for her sake, but then gasped as she felt the large spike in magic power. It was greater than anything she or the people below her had ever felt. Kurama glowed with crimson light and his fox costume attached to his flesh as if it were a second skin before completely bonding with him. Kurama changed into his full kitsune form, 4 tails swishing behind him. Naruto's head was facing downwards, his hair shadowing his eyes. Cobra got up and rubbed his injured stomach. "Shut up, you little brat. You just got a lucky punch in, besides I've hit with harder punches," Cobra said as he stood back up. Contrary to this, Cobra's stomach was actually in extreme pain. "The brat can hit really hard," he thought. "Yeah, we're members of Orasion Seis. We're going to be the strongest guild in all of Fury once we take the girl's magic power for ourselves," Angel cried out. Naruto chuckled, his eyes still covered by his hair. Naruto snarled, ignoring Angel's words before facing Cobra. "You think that is how hard I can hit? Well, listen closely because I'm not going to repeat myself." Wind began to swirl around Naruto and Kurama in a menacing fashion. An aura of fire surrounded Kurama while a mixture of black and blue magic energy outlined Naruto. Naruto snapped up, revealing the glowing white eyes of the dragon of the apocalypse. Looks of fear filled the 4 conscious beings, but the 5th one on the magic carpet suddenly began to stir as he felt the immense magic power filling the air. "When I'm through with you guys, you will come to see that there will be no else in the entire fucking world who will compare to how hard I'll hit you." Naruto and Kurama tensed their legs, causing the ground beneath them to crack from the pressure exerted by their magic power. Naruto released a bestial roar. "I'll kill you all." Naruto and Kurama rushed their opponents. Cobra launched himself at the blonde only for Naruto to reach out to grab him. However, Cobra's ears twitched and he was able to duck beneath the grab. Cobra kicked upwards to smash his foot against Naruto's elbow joint, but the blonde retracted his arm before slamming it downwards. Cobra rolled out of the way and was in shock when he saw the small crater that formed from Naruto's punch. Is he using magic to enhance his strength? No, I would be able to hear his magic system circulating it to his arm. This is his actual physical strength. Cobra stretched out his arms as Kuberos slithered along his shoulders and lashed out at Naruto with his fangs bared. Naruto stood still, which confused the snake only for it to be smashed into the ground as Kurama's tail slammed down on its skull. Cobra hissed and punched Naruto, but the younger boy dodged the attack and attacked with a kick. However, he suddenly felt himself slip. The blonde looked to see Hot Eye's eyes glowing a bright orange. He controls the earth? It's liquefying. Naruto growled mentally as he sent a blast of wind at Cobra, sending the brown-haired boy. But Cobra had foreseen that with his listening magic and managed to get out of the way and then rained down heavy blows on Naruto. He crashed a powerful punch to the top of Naruto's skull before spinning and slamming an upward kick to the chin, causing Naruto's head to snap upwards. Cobra followed up with a series of palm strikes to the chest and then grabbed Naruto by his hair and raised his knee as he brought Naruto's head down. Naruto's face met Cobra's knee and Naruto's head snapped backward from the force. Hot Eye, still having Naruto held within his earthen confines, manipulated the earth and caused to bend and twist before it formed a hand. He then caused the hand to slam the blonde Dragonslayer into the ground multiple times before throwing him into a tree. You can't hit me, Blondie. I can hear your every move, your every contraction and expansion of the muscles, your breath. I can hear your heart rate. I can use those things to predict your moves before you even make them, and I can hear the magic energy flowing through your body. I win. Cobra then rushed Naruto, who was motionless, and aimed a flying kick to Naruto's chest. However, Cobra's ears suddenly picked up on Naruto's increase in heart rate and the contraction and expansion of his arm muscles. Cobra withdrew his leg, but he was not able to foresee the blast of pressurized air that followed the supposed miss. Hot Eye controlled the earth as it liquefied and caught Cobra. You may be able to predict the flow of my magic energy, but you cannot predict how it will act when I release it. Wind is the most versatile of all elements, second only to water. It is near impossible to dodge the wind. The blonde spoke in a monotone. Racer's legs began to vibrate at high speeds before he ran towards Naruto. I'll take you down so fast, you won't even know what happened, Racer announced as he vanished in a blur of speed. You call that fast? I fought against much faster, but then again you're just a weak human. What do you have when put against a demonic kitsune who is way out of your league? Naruto said. Suddenly Kurama appeared in Racer's way and unleashed a ball of flame at him. Racer's eyes widened behind his sunglasses and he quickly jumped in the air and vanished to appear behind Naruto, only to have the blonde's elbow embedded in his stomach. Naruto opened his white eyes and grinned widely. You can't escape from my wrath. Human. Naruto growled. Racer trembled as Naruto twisted and grabbed him by the throat. What are you? Naruto grinned wider at that. You're not worthy to hear that information. Naruto roared before slamming Racer on the ground. However, the earth liquefied and Race was saved from a bone-shattering impact. The earth then formed into spikes and shot up to impale Naruto. A wind shield circulated in front of Naruto and took the attack and stopped it, while also shredding the liquid spikes. Naruto turned and took a deep breath along with Kurama. Unison raid. Karyuendon. A large fire dragon formed as Naruto combined his Furyuendon with Kurama's fire blast. The attack headed towards Hot Eye only for the earth to liquefy beneath him and he sunk into the earth and avoided the attack, causing the poor tree that was hit to blow up. Kurama jumped and flipped in the air, his tails igniting as he aimed for Angel. Gate of the twins, I open thee. Gemini, Angel shouted. A blue magic seal appeared and out came two small gremlin-looking creatures. Transform into the fox and kill him. Angel commanded. Gemini nodded before one of the gremlins jumped atop the other's head before they transformed in a plume of smoke. Don't you dare try and copy me, Kurama roared as his tails clashed with his Gemini's own fiery appendages. Kurama dived down as his body erupted into flame. Fire rocket, he roared. Gemini grinned before taking a deep breath and releasing a blast of flame. Kurama snarled as he dove through the flames, being impervious to fire, and then slammed headfirst into Gemini's stomach. Gemini gasped and the stellar spirit was sent into the ground, causing a crater. Kurama roared and slammed his paw against Genini's face. Change back or I rip your face off, Kurama snarled. Gemini sweated profusely out of fear before nodding and changing back into the twins. How dare you change into the great Kurama? The four-tailed kitsune howled before releasing a torrent of fire from his claws and slashed at both spirits. The twins were sent through the air and Gemini fell to the ground covered in horrible burns. The spirits then vanished in golden light to recover in their homeroom. Angel gaped at how easily her spirit was defeated. Kurama turned to face her and released a blast of fire, aiming to cook her alive. Kuberos then dove in and wrapped his tails around the white-haired girl's legs and tugged. Angel fell to the ground and dragged out of the way. Cobra, control your damn reptile. He just saved your life, the brown-haired boy replied as he backflipped to avoid another punch from the blonde. Cobra leapt and sent a flying kick at Naruto, but the blonde raised his arm and blocked it before swinging Cobra into the ground. However, the ground shot up as Hot Eye aimed to engulf him with the liquid earth. Naruto roared as he was hostage by the earth itself. Naruto ni! Wendy gasped as she saw the blonde taken by the earth. However, his magic power spiked and a blast of wind tore apart his prison as he performed futon, tatsumaki. Naruto then turned and charged magic energy into his leg. A magic seal appeared in front of him as he swung his leg downwards. Futon. Kazajiri, wind style. Air cutter. The wind arc flew towards Hot Eye, but the red-haired man raised the earth to take the hit for him. The attack was absorbed and Hot Eye grinned. I gain a lot of money from selling you after we defeat you. Then I can buy anything, Hot Eye grinned. You're rather greedy. Hot Eye quickly ducked and grinned. My eyes see everything. You cannot sneak up on me. Only money will allow you the luxury of gaining a hit on me. Mwahahaha. Hot Eye laughed. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the older individual. We'll see about that. The Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse snarled. He then vanished in a blur of speed and aimed for Hot Eye's left side, but the eldest of the Orasion Seis members avoided the blow as if he expected it. Naruto then went into a forward roll and then bent his legs, allowing him to leap at Hot Eye. Hot Eye smirked. Such a straightforward move doesn't earn people victory, desu? Hot Eye called upon the earth as it liquefied and formed a column that smashed into Naruto's stomach. Naruto then appeared to vanish into the wind and appeared above Hot Eye and aimed an axe kick at the red-haired enemy, but Hot Eye twisted his body, causing a small crater to form from the impact of Naruto's heel with the earth. He backflipped out of the way as Hot Eye aimed a twister of mud at him. Another TM. But Naruto jumped into the twister and began to spin in the opposite direction. A twister formed around him and due to the clashing rotations, both attacks ended. Naruto was then buried beneath the liquid earth as Hot Eye allowed it to do so. Ha 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 ha, be buried beneath the earth. I will believe that you will not escape death, desu? He laughed. He then manipulated the mud and he threw Naruto into the air. A large earthen fist followed after him and sent the blonde higher into the air. More liquid earth attacks followed after before a giant serpent of liquid earth raced skyward and opened its jaws. It swallowed Naruto whole before it deviated from its upward direction and headed for the ground. Naruto still in its maw. The snake then crashed into the ground, causing liquid earth splatter everywhere as a large crater formed from the impact. Hot Eye laughed even more as he saw nothing happen after a few moments. Ha ha ha, money gives me the strength to defeat all my opponents, Hot Eye exclaimed as he laughed. Insert music. Fairy tale main theme. However, his laughter was cut short when a blast of wind caused the earth to scatter, revealing the blonde Dragonslayer, his eyes still a shining white. You say your eyes can see everything. Well, let's see if that's true, Naruto roared before raising his arms to the heavens and a twister formed around each arm. Futon. Arashi no Hanseki, wind style. Storm Crusher. Naruto slammed his arms on the ground and a large explosion of wind rocketed out from the point of contact, causing the earth to be torn apart from the attack. Hot Eye willed the earth to twist around him and block the attack, but the attack still carved out the earth around it. Hot Eye let down the liquid earth wall and smirked as he saw Naruto had disappeared. I'll know where you are, Blondie. And when I win, I will get my money for selling you. Hot Eye grinned widely. However, the earth cracked beneath him and Hot Eye's eyes widened. No, impossible. Nothing escapes my eyes. Shut the fuck up, you transvestite. Naruto snarled as he crashed a wind magic enhanced uppercut to the chin. Hot Eye spiraled upwards, but the red-haired 17-year-old flipped in the air before softening the earth below him to have a safe landing. Too bad that it's never safe when there's an angry Dragonslayer below you. Naruto's arms were enveloped by wind and sharpened to form blades. Kase no Yaiba. Naruto leapt up before he began to form a series of slashes against Hot Eye's extremely durable body. Futon no Kenjutsu. Shikaze no Mai, wind-style sword technique. Dance of the Four Winds. Naruto yelled. He slashed in an upward diagonal attack, following up with another upward diagonal strike as he spun. He then raised both blades and performed a double horizontal slash. He slashed upwards with his left blade and downwards with his right. He flipped and crashed his foot into Hot Eye's face and then went into a backflip and impaled Hot Eye through both of his thighs, causing the red-haired feminine-looking man to cry out in pain. Naruto followed up with a double horizontal slash and then raised both arms to the heavens and fused both wind blades into one before crashing in down on Hot Eye. Futon. Fujin no Tanto, wind style. Wind God's sword. As Naruto was about to make contact with Hot Eye, he was hit in the side by Racer's kick, sending him spiraling through the air. Racer grabbed his injured friend and landed on the ground. "You okay, Hatai?" Racer asked. The 17-year-old cartwheeling out of the way as Racer tried to hit him with a flying kick. Racer landed against a tree and pushed off before vanishing in midair. "You're slow," Naruto shouted as he went into a handstand and spun. Fuuton. Senpu Kyaku, cyclones erupted around Naruto's legs and a whirlwind formed around the boy himself. The attack expanded outwards and crashed into a speeding Racer who was sent flying into the path of one of Kurama's flaming tails. The fiery attack burnt Racer's jacket and sent him soaring. Racer flipped in the air and skidded along the ground to stop his motion before moving forward. He remained stationary for a moment as his backward movement combined with the fact that he wanted to move forward kept him in one spot. Naruto then appeared in a swirl of wind next to the long-nosed boy. "Like I said, you're slow." Naruto raised his leg high up into the air. However, the earth rose up and trapped Naruto's leg just as he was about to crash the axe kick down on the blonde and black-haired boy. "Thanks, Hatai," Racer said to his fellow member. The book-holding individual nodded and Racer suddenly switched his direction and punched Naruto in the stomach. Naruto bent over from the force before the earth holding his leg seemed to move on its own and threw him away. Racer sped after him and kicked him multiple times in the stomach before spinning and crashing the roundhouse to the side. Naruto tumbled through the air, but was suddenly hit in the back as Cobra appeared behind him. Naruto went into a forward roll before turning and grabbing Kuberos out of the air and was about to break the snake's neck when he threw the serpent at Racer who had aimed a punch at him. The violet-scaled serpent knocked Racer to the ground before both of them were stomped down on by Naruto's feet as he landed on them from above. Naruto then grabbed Racer's face and used it to vault over him and lash out with a double kick as Angel tried to tackle him. The white-haired girl was sent flying back, but she spread her wings on her back and took off towards him. She aimed a punch for his head, hoping the use of her wings would have gained her an edge, but Naruto was not fazed in the slightest as he simply raised his knee and slammed it against her chin. Her jaws made a clack as they met each other with terrific force. She was then grabbed out of the air and slammed into the earth. Naruto held her there for a moment before turning, still holding her, and allowed the girl to take a kick to the spine from Cobra. Angel released a cry of pain as she felt like her back was about to bend out of shape. "Angel!" Cobra exclaimed. He then tried to pull Angel out of Naruto's grip, but the blonde's grip was rather strong. Naruto grinned like a madman. "You want her? Take her." Naruto's free hand was then filled with pure magic energy. The magic energy swirled into a compact sphere and he thrust it forth. "Energy make. Rasendangan, spiraling bullet." The Rasengan flew out of his hand and into Angel's stomach, sending both her and Cobra flying back. But the brown-haired teen flipped in midair and Angel reached into her pocket once more. She pulled out a silver key and pointed it at him. "Gate of the Chisel, I open thee." Kylum, an orb-shaped celestial spirit, appeared out of a blue magic seal. Its steel-like body was levitating and the green circle in its center shone as if it were an eye. "Kylum. Cannon form," Angel commanded. Kylum gave a beep before changing into a large silver, high-tech looking cannon. The green circle of Kylum's eye was rather prominent since it was glowing brightly. Beams of green light blasted out of the eye of Kylum and flew towards Naruto. Naruto avoided the beams and jumped before raising his arm. Futon. Kei's no Yaiba. He slashed with his wind blade, but suddenly Kylum's body glowed and the spirit changed into a large silver blade that clashed with the wind blade. A blast of wind ejected outwards from the point of contact between the two blades. Naruto backflipped and grabbed Cobra in midair as the boy had tried to hit him from behind before slamming him into the ground. "But, I should have heard you," Cobra gasped as Naruto was atop him. "I'm unpredictable. Now shut up so I can kill you." Naruto roared before throwing Cobra into the path of a speeding Kylum who intended to impale him. Angel's eyes widened before performing a forced gate closure. The technique caused a large portion of Angel's magic power to go down and as a result she was unable to avoid the tackle from Kurama. Kurama then jumped as Hatai aimed to engulf him in an arm, breathed a blast of fire and the earth solidified before aiming the attack at Hatai himself. Hatai's eyes widened before some a wall of earth and took the attack. However, Kurama used his speed to crash through the wall. "My money, I could have gotten so much from selling you too," Hatai gasped as Kurama raised his flame-covered claws. "Fuck you," the kitsune growled before crashing the claws down on Hatai. The red-haired boy released a gasp as he felt his ribs crack and his skin burn. Kurama grabbed the book-holding boy and threw him away before sending a blast of fire at his airborne target. However, Racer appeared in a blur and caught Hatai and blurred out of the way of Kurama's attack. "Good thing I'm fast, Hatai?" Hatai nodded before two arms of liquid earth bent to his will. He sent one at Kurama, but the fox jumped over the attack and his tails extended outwards, catching on fire. Kurama flipped in the air and crashed his tails down upon the two, but Hatai used the second fist to block the attack. Hatai appeared to the left of the kitsune and spun around. "Nitro." A furious combo of spinning legs slammed into Kurama and sent him flying through the air. Racer then appeared in front of the soaring fox and kicked away before blurring away once more and appeared above him and crashed a downward kick and sent Kurama to the ground. Kurama slammed into the earth in a crater and Racer smirked as he landed in front of the crater. "You weren't fast enough, fox." Racer grinned. However, he was caught off guard when Kurama exploded into a plume of flame. Racer gasped when the earth cracked beneath him and a flaming uppercut crashed into his chin. Racer soared upwards. Kurama followed after as he leapt out of his newly formed foxhole. He grabbed Racer by his ankles with his tails and flipped in midair. Once he built up enough momentum, Kurama slammed Racer down on the ground, causing a crater to form from the attack. He then jumped away as two arms of earth extended towards him before spinning and releasing flames from every part of his body. Pyro Tornado. Kurama roared as a flaming twister headed towards the user of those earthen fists. Hot-Eye formed a serpent out of liquid earth and used it to get of reach of the tornado. However, the fired twister bent and extended outwards. Hot-Eye's eyes widened as the fires raced towards him before it morphed into the head of a giant kitsune. Kitsune no Koenga, Fox's blazing fang. Kurama roared as the giant fox of fire aimed to bite down on Hot-Eye. However, Hot-Eye's serpent swirled into an orb around Hot-Eye and protected its master from the attack. A large explosion formed as the attack made contact with Hot-Eye's, but luckily the liquid earth took the brunt of the attack. Hot-Eye leapt out of the smoke cloud, clothes and book burning. "My book, I'll need to spend money to buy another one," Hot-Eye cried. "You break my heart," Kurama said sarcastically before releasing a fist of fire at Hot-Eye. A wall of liquid earth took the attack before the earth beneath Kurama liquefied and encased the four-tailed fox. Kurama then broke through as he caused the earth to burst apart with the amount of heat he had generated from his body. The earthen prison burst like a bubble before his tails wrapped themselves around Hot-Eye's waist and he was slammed into the ground multiple times before being thrown a cobra. Cobra and Hot-Eye sprawled out on the ground before Racer appeared in front of them and kicked Naruto in the face, sending the Windblade-equipped Dragonslayer flipping through the air. Naruto landed on the ground before raising his arms and they were encompassed by swirling winds. Futon. K's no Arashi, wind style. Windstorm. Naruto howled as he clapped his hands together. A violent windstorm flew towards the three members of Orasion Seis, but suddenly a copy of Naruto appeared in front of them and formed the same attack. The two wind storms collided, causing the trees to creak, and Wendy was nearly blown off from her perch. The Orasion Seis members looked in shock before the Naruto in front of them was shown to be Gemini. Gemini then vanished in golden light due to having used a lot of energy from its being summoned twice. "Thanks, Angel." Cobra sighed. Angel nodded, but she was suddenly kicked in the side before she was sent flying upwards as Naruto appeared beneath her and followed up with an upward kick. He jumped after her and twisted before slamming his foot down on her skull. She descended to the ground, but Naruto used wind magic to increase his speed and grabbed the white-haired girl. He locked her legs in place as he wrapped his arms around them and held her head in place as his feet wrapped around her neck. Angel's eyes widened as she saw they were rapidly approaching ground level and at the speed they were falling at she would no doubt die. However, Racer was there to save her as he appeared beneath them and jumped. He grabbed Angel by her head and used her to vault and slam his feet into Naruto's face. The blow caused Naruto's grip to loosen and he finally let go as Racer followed up with numerous, fast-paced kicks to the face. He grabbed Angel before spinning and slamming a kick to Naruto's stomach. However, Naruto used Futon Tobu to remain airborne and the two airborne Orasion Seis members were in shock. "He can fly," they exclaimed mentally before they both flung away. Naruto then sent a wind dragon after them, but Racer landed against a tree, Angel in his arms and vanished in a blur of speed, causing the wind dragon to shred the tree into splinters. Naruto was then sent to the ground as a quickly rising liquid earth hammer slammed down on him. Naruto flipped in the air and landed on his feet with enough force to form a crater. He saw the hammer fall after him and he quickly began to spin. A gray-green magic seal appeared above his head. Futon Tatsumaki. Naruto yelled as a giant tornado formed and caused the liquid earth hammer to split apart with a sickening squelch. He then raised his arms in an X shape to block a flying kick from Cobra. Cobra used the block to twist and tried to slam his heel against the side of Naruto's head, but the blonde ducked beneath the blow. Naruto grabbed Cobra's ankle, causing the boy to fall to the ground. Naruto then twisted the ankle, intent on breaking it, but Cobra rotated in the same direction as the twist so his ankle wouldn't break, but also it allowed him to break free of the blonde's hold. Cobra then went into a handstand and spun on them. A windmill-like kick would have slammed into Naruto's temple had the blonde Dragonslayer not ducked in time. He then performed a sweep kick. Cobra fell to the ground, but used the fall to perform a twisting motion with his arm as a balance, thus lashing out with a kick and slammed his foot into Naruto's ribs. Naruto rolled with the blow before raising his arm and black and blue magic energy coated it. Cobra's eyes widened as he saw Naruto release a loud roar as he slammed the limb down on the ground. A streak of the dual-colored magic energy suddenly took the shape of a dragon's head. The dragon head roared as it bared its fangs. Mokashiryu no Kuro Kiba, Apocalypse Dragon's Black Fang. Naruto mentally shouted, not wanting to reveal his status as a Dragonslayer to these unworthy enemies. Cobra was sent flying from the attack, and he was sent flying through the air only to be caught by a liquid earth cushion made by Hatai. Before looking to see Naruto crack his knuckles, still rearing to kill. As was Kurama as the fox appeared next to Naruto. Cobra then called upon Kuberos, and the violet serpent wrapped its tail around Cobra's waist and threw him at Naruto at a high speed. Naruto channeled wind magic into his feet. A gray-green magic seal appeared around his legs, and wind surrounded them and allowed his already insane level of speed rise to new heights. Futon. Shunpo no Kazejin. The blonde muttered before he seemed to vanish into the wind. Cobra's flying form was suddenly greeted with the sight of Naruto in front of him and then above him. The onlookers gaped. Asir led into Naruto's hand and formed a compact sphere. The sphere then grew larger, but its equilibrium became unstable upon the addition of the extra magic energy. Energy make. Udama Rasengan. Naruto slammed the attack down, but Hatai manipulated the earth and a blob of earth took the attack. However, the attack tore through most of the earthen shield before it exploded outwards in a dome of pure magic energy. Kurama raced in and grabbed Naruto as he was sent flying through the air by his own attack. You really have to learn to keep that thing stable. It's only blowing up in your face. Kurama spoke. Naruto nodded. Yeah, was all he could say as he watched the dome of magic energy die down. The smoke cloud dispersed to reveal a large crater in the ground. A burnt and broken cobra lay in the center of it. Had Hotai not acted in time, the attack would have surely killed him. Hotai manipulated the earth and had the liquid-like arm bring Cobra over to him and the other members. Naruto floated in the air as he used Futon, Tobu, Kurama, having reverted back into his Exceed form so he could remain airborne, and flapped his wings next to Naruto. Angel summoned Kylum once more from the spirit world, and the orb-shaped spirit changed into its cannon mode before firing a large beam of energy. Naruto licked his lips as he wanted to eat the magic energy in that attack so badly, but he restrained himself, allowing Kurama to block it with a fire wall. Kurama then made a pushing motion with his paws and the firewall flew towards the group. Hatai raised up a wave of liquid earth and snuffed out the flames before sending spheres of it at Naruto and Kurama. The two partners flew through the air, avoiding the attacks with aerial acrobatics that would make any trapeze artist green with envy. Energy blasts and earth bullets raced towards Naruto and Kurama, and then both of them paused in midair as they saw the liquid earth and laser blast merge into one. The earth bullet took on a green glow as the energy was absorbed into it. Hatai then allowed the liquid earth to solidify as he cancelled out his powers. The large green crystal of an attack shot towards Naruto and Kurama at a fast pace. Unison raid. Angel and Hatai yelled, Kryptonite. Naruto and Kurama took deep breaths and unleashed a combination of wind and fire. Unison raid. Karyuendan. The two elements mixed as they made contact with the large emerald of an attack before it exploded into shards. Kylum then vanished as it calculated the probability of it coming back to the human world were very slim. Impossible. Angel and Hatai gaped. Racer got up, being the only one with enough magic power to do anything. He raced towards Naruto and struck with a kick at the flying blonde. However, Naruto snarled and grabbed the boy's leg and punched his knee. A sickening crack echoed through the air as Naruto broke the sunglasses-wearing boy's kneecap with that punch. He then swung Racer and threw him down at his friends. Futon. Rikuden. A giant wind bullet crashed into the speedster's body shortly after, and he coughed up a large amount of blood as his organ felt like they were about to be crushed by the drilling air bullet. Hatai caught Racer in midair and rested him down. Pax A. Mean punch. Racer coughed up another glob of blood. You do not touch the Sky Dragon. You do not touch Wendy. Ever? Agnologia's Dragonslayer roared. The four injured members of Orasion Seis looked up as they saw wind and magic spiraling into a single form. Naruto's glowing white eyes shone brighter. Pure magic energy swirled into Naruto's open palm as he raised his arm skyward. Magic energy grew larger and larger in his hand as it formed a Rasengan. The Rasengan grew to an enormous size, so large that it appeared to dwarf the trees. Energy make. Cho-o-o-d-a-m-a-r-a-s-e-n-d-a-n-g-a-n, super great spiraling bullet. Naruto sent a pulse of magic into his hand and the attack rocketed out of his palm. 5 seconds. That was how long his attack would remain stable for, and at the speed it was moving it was obvious the attack would reach the frozen member of Orasion Seis before the 5 seconds were up. However, as the 4 humans and 1 serpent closed their eyes, expecting their inevitable death, they realized their deaths had suddenly not ended. They opened them and gasped when they saw the black-haired, previously asleep, boy in front of them. The Cho-Udama Rasengan had suddenly lengthened into a beam rather than the gigantic sphere it was meant to be before it was bent around him. The attack slammed through numerous trees and rocks before exploding outwards 2 seconds later. No way. Midnight, they all gasped as they looked at their savior. Midnight looked back at them, eyes wide open revealing the red irises within them. Go back to Master Brain and tell him of this development. I will defeat him. With my magic, it should be able to allow me to defend and defeat him. No way, Angel coughed as she clutched the burn mark on her stomach from Naruto's Rasengan Dangan. Yeah, you can't handle this. This monster on your own. Even if you are Master Brain's ace, you're no use to him, or as if you're dead, Cobra yelled. Hot Eye, take them and go. Hurry, Midnight yelled as he distorted a fire blast from Kurama and caused it to slam into the ground a bit farther away from the group. Hot Eye and the others gritted their teeth, but they complied with the black-haired boy. Be careful, Hot Eye said before the earth liquefied and swallowed up the four. Midnight turned and looked up at the glowing white eyes of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and the crimson orbs of Kurama the Exceed. I spent my entire time protecting myself with my instinctual distortion magic. Midnight whispered to himself as he bent the wind blast from Naruto away. But now that I'm awake, I think it's time you died, Midnight yelled as he stared at Naruto with a crazed look in his eyes. Naruto smirked as his white eyes met Midnight's crimson ones. Midnight raised his arm and suddenly ethereal blades of distorted air formed above him. Naruto stared at them with his Mokushiru no Baikugan, Apocalypse Dragon's all-seeing white eye, and formed a dome of wind around himself and Kurama. The air blades were deflected and Kurama looked at his partner in confusion. Naruto, why did you do that? There wasn't anything there. He uses distortion magic. He distorts the air around him, bending it to his will like I do with the wind. Only his distortions are on a different level than mine. He can distort the air around him so that he can prevent magic attacks from reaching him. Naruto explained. Just now, he distorted the air to make ethereal blades of air and sent them at us, but I blocked them with the windshield. So how do we fight what we can't see? Kurama asked. Naruto turned to Kurama. Like I told that old Nervit, nothing escapes these eyes. Naruto said his white eyes seemed to shine brighter. Kurama grinned widely. Then let's take down this carpet-riding bastard since he dared to sleep through the battle. Naruto nodded before he manipulated the wind dome and made it into a large spear-like weapon. Futon. Hotengeki, wind style. Heavenward halberd. Naruto yelled. The halberd flew towards Midnight, but the black-haired boy sent the halberd around him, causing it to impale several trees through and through. Kurama then dove down, changing into his War Fox mode. Fire rocket. Kurama yelled as his body was engulfed in fire. Midnight distorted the fires, but was in shock when he saw that he couldn't. This was due to Kurama's body naturally producing the flames at a constant and rapid rate, and as a result, Midnight was now in even more trouble. What the? Midnight was suddenly hit in the face with a fiery punch, sending him soaring through the air. Midnight flipped in the air and skidded along the ground only to be sent flying as Naruto planted a kick to his ass. Midnight rolled on the ground, but rolled to the left to avoid the punch that followed after. A small crater for Med was. The red-eyed boy's eyes narrowed before he tripped Naruto's feet out from under him and climbed back onto his feet. But Naruto had went into a backwards roll when he fell, so Midnight sent his distortion blades at him. Naruto saw the blades coming with the eyes of his adoptive father and then took a deep breath and unleashed a wave of wind. Futon. Daitappa, the wind blast met the air blades, but the blades cut through the wave as if they were nothing. As Naruto avoided them, he noticed they were much thinner. I see, he distorted the air so that the blades would be at a much higher pressure so that way they would cut through my wind even if they are of the same element. Naruto thought, this might actually be fun. Naruto raised his arms and twin cyclones formed around his arms. Futon. Arashi no Hanseki. A large shockwave of wind was sent Midnight's way, but the ace of Orasion Seis bent the attack away from him. But Kurama wrapped his tails around Midnight and then threw the black-haired boy into a tree. Midnight flew through said tree and through two more before causing the trunk of the fourth tree to snap as he came into contact with it. Midnight got up and avoided the punch to his skull from Naruto and kicked the blonde away. Midnight lashed out with a punch, but Naruto ducked beneath it and crashed his fist into Midnight's gut, causing the boy to lose the air in his lungs. Naruto followed up with another punch to the stomach before performing an uppercut, sending Midnight upwards. Naruto jumped and did another uppercut before backflipping and crashing the toe of his shoe against the red-eyed enemy's chin. The attack sent Midnight skyward. Kurama leapt atop Naruto and used the blonde as a springboard to reach above the spiky, black-haired boy and continued with the onslaught of uppercuts. Kurama then ejected jets of flame from the bottoms of his paw-like feet to propel him upwards and then clasped his hands together, igniting them. He crashed the hands down on Midnight's skull and the boy was sent to the ground. Midnight flipped in the air and managed to right himself, though, and so he was able to land on his feet and skidded backwards. As he came to a boulder, he saw Naruto and Kurama heading for him. Midnight held out his arm and then swiped it as if he were slicing something. Spiral pain, Midnight said. A large twister of distorted air formed around both of the black-haired boys' opponents, and Kurama and Naruto were sent skyward as the attack caused bruises and numerous slash marks to form on them. Naruto gritted his teeth as he clutched his side where a large laceration had formed before sending out a wind dragon from his jaws. Midnight deflected the attack, but Naruto appeared behind him as if he appeared out of thin air, which he did, and aimed a punch to the back of his skull. Midnight ducked beneath the attack before performing a sweep kick. Naruto tripped, but went into a backhand spring to get back onto his feet as he fell backwards. Kurama appeared out of the ground and Midnight leaned back to avoid the uppercut to the chin and kicked Kurama in the back. However, Naruto rushed forth and slammed a powerful headbutt to Midnight's stomach. Midnight grabbed his head and threw Naruto away with surprising strength. Spiral pain. A vortex of distorted air encased Naruto and sent up spiraling into the sky, but Naruto flew through the air with his wind magic. Midnight grinned before he distorted the light around him and he became invisible. Naruto roared as he punched to the left of Midnight's location and suddenly an object was sent crashing through a boulder. "How did you see me?" Midnight gasped as he got back up. Kurama jumped down from above and slammed his feet into Midnight's stomach and then wrapped his hands around his throat and began to squeeze. "Because you can't fool the nose and the ears. You smell disgusting and you breathe loudly." Kurama growled as he began to squeeze tighter. Midnight growled as he was being choked and his eyes seemed to shine crimson. Naruto and Kurama were suddenly blasted away by a few ethereal blades, causing some deep cuts to form on their bodies. Midnight coughed as he stood back up. The sky suddenly turned red and black clouds filled the, now, night sky. Trees changed from green to a dark, navy blue. Kurama and Naruto looked up as Midnight's form grew black and began to look more grotesque. His body seemed to bulge and grow before Midnight was no longer a human, but a demon-like creature the size of two fully grown men. Naruto snarled as he stared at the monster before them. He leapt into the air and spun, adding wind magic to his leg to form a blade around it. "Don't use such mediocre illusions on me, boy. I am not a weakling like the other mages in this pathetic waste of land," Naruto roared. Naruto sliced the demon in half as he flipped downwards, his leg wind blade cutting through the thick flesh of the black demon. However, it seemed as if the scene before them gained a large crack in it before it shattered like grass, revealing the afternoon's environment. Naruto and Kurama then raced towards the panting Midnight. He had used a lot of magic power to form that illusion and yet the blonde had broken through it in mere seconds. Kurama crashed a powerful tail strike to Midnight's stomach, sending the body skidding back before Naruto appeared beneath him. Naruto balanced on his right hand and foot before kicking up with his left leg. Midnight flew up from the powerful kick and Naruto then positioned his body so he was on all fours before jumping and seemed to float beneath Midnight as if he were his shadow. "Eat this, you disgusting piece of shit." Naruto twisted his body and kicked Midnight in the ribs. He then used the force of the kick to reverse his movement and twisted to crash another kick to his other side. Naruto rotated and punched Midnight in the face before rotating again and slammed an elbow to Midnight's face, breaking his nose. He rotated again to slam another fist to Midnight's face, injuring his nose even further. Naruto then saw they were only a few feet above the ground and nodded as he twisted to build momentum for the last strike. He slammed a brutal heel drop onto Midnight's stomach as the boy met the ground, causing his innards to rupture and Midnight coughed up blood from the strike. Naruto then flipped away from him before Kurama leapt and crashed down on Midnight, injuring his damaged body even further. Kurama then reached out with his hands and held the weakened boy's neck in a tight grip. "Move even a muscle and I will snap your neck like a twig," Kurama growled. "Now we have something to say to you." Naruto walked up to the black-haired insomniac. "Listen here, Orasion Seis. I don't know who the hell you are and why the fuck you're targeting Wendy, but I am going to kill you for even trying to get her. Why you would want 5-year-old girl is beyond even me, but know this. If your friends are going to come back for her at a later date and I find out, hell will be released and I will show you all my true power and none of you will escape my wrath." Naruto roared. Kurama loosened his grip for Midnight to breathe, but still kept his claws wrapped around his throat. Naruto stood up before raising his foot and slamming it down on Midnight's face, causing the boy's face to bruise and bleed even more. Kurama then whispered into the boy's ear, "You know bitch, the thing is, he didn't need me to kick your asses, but know that a sleeping dragon is not one which should be woken up." Kurama then got off of the boy. "Now go and tell your master that if he tried this stunt again, I will hunt him down, I will find him and I will kill him," Naruto snarled. Midnight didn't reply, but the fear was still present on his face. Naruto then grabbed Midnight and flipped him over onto his stomach and grabbed his arms, planting his foot between the boy's shoulder blades. And he began to pull. Midnight released a scream as Naruto's white eyes seemed to glow brighter at the sound of pain. "Ha ha ha, you seem attached to these arms, Ed. Let's see how much it hurts when I detach them." A loud snap and crack were heard as Naruto wrenched the boy's arms free of their sockets and then broke them at the elbow as well. "The only reason you live is because I want to see the look of fear on your face when I see your face again should we meet in the future." Naruto chuckled darkly before frowning. Now get out of my sight, human. Naruto then looked at Kurama and nodded. Kurama sprouted 4 tails and all 5 of them swung back and forth before swinging the back forcefully. 4. Kurama yelled before swinging them and midnight was sent flying off into the sky, over the trees and somewhere over the rainbow way up high. Naruto sighed before turning around. He closed his eyes and cut off the flow of Dragonslayer magic and his blue irises returned as soon as he had blinked. You can come out now, he called out. Naruto and Kurama watched as the young Sky Dragonslayer ran out with a big smile on her face. She ran up and wrapped her tiny arms around Naruto's legs. You were so awesome, Naruto ni sensei. You were all like, wham, bam, pow, boom. And you had the funny, angry face again. Wendy giggled like the innocent little child she was. Naruto frowned. I do not look like that when I'm angry, he growled. Wendy pointed at him and laughed, funny face. Naruto sighed and Kurama and Wendy laughed at his expense. Kurama-chan, you're not cuddly anymore, she pouted. Kurama sighed before turning into his Exceed form, fox costume and all. Wendy cheered before taking the Exceed into her arms and holding Kurama like a stuffed toy as she began hugging him. Naruto ni sensei? Naruto looked down at the little girl. What are we gonna do now? Are those bad people gonna come back again? She asked. Naruto growled, causing Wendy to back up a bit in fear as she saw his eyes become filled with rage. If they come back, I'll find them and I will kill them. They were lucky they were able to escape and that one we just beat should be able to live for now. Naruto then grunted as he suddenly felt the effects of the battle on his body, Kurama as well. Both Exceed and Naruto then began to groan in pain. Naruto ni, Kurama-chan. Wendy gasped as she watched them. She gently placed Kurama on the ground before holding out her hands. A sky-blue glow enveloped them before a haze of the same color washed over her 2 patients. She saw their faces relax as her lost magic began to take effect. Their cuts and bruises healed in a matter of minutes. All better. Wendy gave a small smile to her brother figure. Naruto stared at the little girl and nodded. You are getting better. He praised her as he ruffled her hair. Now then, we have to pack up and move. We can't risk those bastards finding you again. Wendy nodded before skipping away to their campsite. Naruto ran his fingers through his hair and Kurama got up and floated next to Naruto. You really think letting her go is a good idea? He asked. Naruto nodded. It's the only way I can assure she's protected. Rubel will watch over her and his illusion magic should help in preventing her from being found by those Orasion Seis assholes, Naruto said. What do you think they wanted her for in the first place? Naruto shrugged. I couldn't care less for why they wanted her and it doesn't matter because they will never get their hands on her. Not now. Not ever. Naruto said determinedly as he walked after Wendy. Now come. Aye sir. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the red-eyed cat. What? I thought it would be catchy. Yeah, sure. And someone here in Earthland is going to be crazy enough to give a cat a ridiculous name. Kurama tilted his head. What would be a ridiculous name in your book, Naruto? I don't know, a name like Happy. Happy sounds like a stupid name, Naruto answered. A-N. I like Happy Mind you guys. Happy's awesome, aye sir. After packing up, the trio had already abandoned their campsite. Naruto then decided he would up the training for Wendy and try to make the most of the time he had left with her, which is why he had decided to walk towards the Nervate area instead of flying like he did with Kurama. Naruto ni sensei. Yes, Sky Dragon? Wendy huffed at the nickname, but continued with her question. When can I hear about Grandine? She asked. Naruto sighed as he stopped walking. Kurama, who was resting atop Naruto's head, watched the small 5-year-old. Alright, I'll tell you what happened. I can't tell you anything more than this as this is probably the only loophole in the entire Oath of the Dragon. Grandine and the other dragons left their children to go to a meeting that only dragons are allowed to attend. It is very important to their kind so they are not able to tell anyone about it. That's why Grandine left you without a reason, Naruto said. Satisfied, Wendy frowned. How do you know this? My Two-san, the dragon who raised me. He is a dragon that is able to do things other dragons cannot, Naruto said. Wendy was about to ask who his dragon parent was when she saw the look in his eyes. Do not push it, Sky Dragon. Do not ask any more questions concerning the matter. Do you understand? What why? I asked you. Do you understand? He snarled. Wendy gulped. Even after 3 months, whenever she saw his angry expression, the image of how he nearly took her life entered her mind. Wendy nodded. Yes. Ni-sensei. She mumbled. Naruto nodded before he started walking. Wendy followed, but then watched his larger form. Who was your Two-san, Naruto ni? Wendy thought. 5 weeks later the 2 Dragonslayers continued to walk, Kurama resting atop Naruto's head. However, as they were walking along a mountain trail, the sky was a bright blue above them. Come on, Wendy. Hit the rock, Naruto said as he pelted another stone at the blue-haired girl. Wendy sighed as she sent another rock away with a palm strike. It had been 5 weeks since the day that Orasion Seis had attacked. The 5 that Naruto and Kurama took down had never even made so much as a peep in response to the beatdown the two had given them. Naruto had decided that he would move as slowly as he could without raising too much suspicion from Wendy, while also moving fast enough that they would have to change campsites every single day. "Alright, now Wendy, let's try out the wings again," Naruto said. Wendy nodded as she stepped off to the side of the stone path on the mountain's smooth incline. She then began to spin on the tips of her toes like a ballerina. Wind began to swirl around her arms at a fast pace. She stopped spinning and her arms were now coated with wind in the shape of feathery wings. "Tenryu no Ranyoku, Sky Dragon's Tempest Wing," Wendy yelled as she slashed her newly formed wings downwards. The wings flapped with the movement of her arms and she crashed them down on the ground, causing a giant shockwave of wind to form at the point of contact. The ground was broken up in many places from the strike. "You can keep it stable now, good," Naruto said. "Manipulate the wind to spin faster though when you use this attack. Your wings require speed in order to be effective enough in a battle." Wendy nodded and the three continued moving forward as Naruto continuously dodged small fireballs from Kurama along the way while she had to counter with her physical moves and try to hit Naruto at the same time. However, along the way, the three spotted a figure up ahead. "Naruto ni, look, there's somebody over there," she informed him, pointing at the person up ahead. Naruto narrowed his eyes before looking at Kurama. The fox costume wearing cat sprouted his wings with a cry of "Era!" and took off. He floated above the person and managed to get a good look at the person, committing his appearance to memory. Once that was done, he flew back to Naruto and Wendy. "Is it a person from Orasion Seis?" Wendy asked with fear in her voice. "Don't show any fear, Sky Dragon. I've taught you better than that," Naruto said before turning to Kurama. "Who is it?" "No one we know. And he's Obi from Orasion Seis, since all of those people were a bit older if not the same age as you, Naruto. He's got blue hair, black eyes. Has some kind of weird tattoo by his right eye. But the thing is, he has absolutely no magical power at all. In fact, all of it is hidden within the staves he carries on his back," the Exceed said. "Well, let's go catch up to him. Maybe we can help him find what he's looking for." Wendy smiled before skipping ahead. Naruto was about to reach out to her and tell her to stop, but her skipping and the fact that her agility was now much better prevented him from doing so. Naruto slapped his face and dragged the hand down his face as it pulled his skin. "I wonder if this is what it's like when Toussaint watched over a younger me," he mumbled as he saw the 5-year-old near the blue-haired boy. "Hiya," Wendy greeted. The boy turned with a serious gaze, but it softened when he saw Wendy. "Hello, little girl. Are you lost?" Wendy shook her head. "Nope, I'm walking with Ni-sensei. Are you lost?" the Sky Dragonslayer asked. The boy shook his head. "No, I'm just looking for something," he spoke mysteriously. "What is it? Maybe we can help," Wendy said as she saw Naruto and Kurama finally catch up to her since they were walking rather slowly. "Wendy, I told you to stop running off on your own," Naruto scolded, "and you run off to go and talk to some brat we don't even know." The blue-haired boy frowned at being called a brat, but seeing as how the boy was just doing it out of the safety for the little girl, he let it slide. "I'm sorry if I caused you any trouble, sir. Exceed?" he whispered when he spotted Kurama floating next to Naruto, wings spread. The three's eyes widened in shock. "How do you know what I am?" Kurama growled as he grabbed the boy by the collar. Wendy and Naruto knew what Kurama was as he had informed them of the name of his species, but he had never told them about the other world, Edelus. The world parallel to Earthland. The boy continued to stare in shock at Kurama. Impossible. Anima. Where?" The boy looked around as if he were now looking for something he had lost. Kurama's eyes widened at the mention of the interdimensional portal. He quickly grabbed the boy and flew him out of earshot of Naruto and Wendy in the sky, gripping him with the supernatural strength all Exceed seemed to have. "Anima? You're telling that you're from?" "Yes, I am, but I am sorry, Exceed-sama, but I must be on my way. I sense Anima is near and I need to stop it before it's too late." "You look familiar," Kurama mused as he watched the boy's face. He observed his blue hair and the tattoo. He then sniffed the boy before his eyes widened. "Of course. You're his son. They said you died though?" "I haven't, Exceed-sama. I was taken in by Anima and sent here to Earthland. The king plans to absorb the magic from this world and use it to power Edelus using Anima. I am here to make sure that does not happen," the boy informed the fox-costumed cat. Kurama nodded before flying down and dropping the boy from a suitable height. Kurama floated in front of the boy's face. "I cannot stay here for long, it is coming." Kurama's eyes widened as the boy quickly waved his hand in front of Kurama's face and suddenly Kurama felt drowsy before falling asleep. The boy caught Kurama and handed him to Naruto. "What did you do, sleep magic?" The boy didn't respond. "I'm sorry, but I must go. I need to take care of something." "Wait, what?" Wendy exclaimed before she saw the boy suddenly vanish into the air as mist. Wendy frowned. "I wanted to make a new friend." Maybe next time you run into a stranger you will, but until then, Sky Dragon. Let's go, we have a lot of ground to cover, he said. Wendy nodded and they continued to walk, but they were unaware that the blue-haired boy was watching them from atop a tree. I can't believe it. One of the 9. They're here then? The boy shook his head as he felt a large pulse of energy in the air. No time to focus on that, have to stop anima. He then vanished into the air as mist. Would see, May 22nd, year X 778. When Naruto had said he wanted to travel slowly, he traveled slowly. Naruto ni sensei, where are we going? Wendy whined. Kurama and Naruto sighed. I've told you before, Sky Dragon. You'll see when we get there. You said that last year and besides, you never even told me anything today. Naruto and Kurama raised their eyebrows. Told you anything about what? Naruto asked. Wendy huffed. Stupid, Naruto ni sensei, she mumbled with an annoyed look in her eyes. And this is why we will never understand women, Kurama stated. Naruto nodded. Even Tusan said females gave trouble to him and he was a dragon. The blonde sighed. It had now been almost 1 year since he had found the little Dragonslayer of the sky. He had trained her to the best of his ability. She was stronger, faster, more in tune with her element of the air, but everything grew with her abilities. Even her annoyingness levels. Kurama thought with a sweat drop as he watched the little girl use her enhanced jumping skills to jump atop Naruto's shoulders and held onto him. Naruto kept her steady by holding her legs. Naruto's as ignorant as ever to the fact, as usual. The red exceed thought, but then he became thoughtful as he glanced up at the sky. Just what is happening in Edolis that they are using anima? And why was he here in Earthland? The rest of the trip was in silence. Naruto had switched Wendy from his shoulder to carrying her piggyback because she was feeling sleepy, after which she promptly fell asleep. Kurama kept thinking about the boy they had met before, but Kurama was knocked out of his thoughts when Naruto paused and looked back at Wendy and rolled his shoulders. Wendy snapped awake, jumped off of Naruto and quickly formed Tenryu no Kirusume. All out of pure reflex, much to Naruto's satisfaction in seeing. Naruto ni, what happened? Are we under attack? She asked. Naruto shook his head. He ruffled her hair as he walked up to her. No, but very good reflexes. Naruto praised her. Wendy grinned. I learned from the best. Naruto grinned toothily like his biological parents and then pointed in front of her. Come on, Wendy. We're here. Wendy looked around as she observed the ancient Nervate village. Of course she didn't know it was the Nervate village. Rubel, Naruto called out. Are you here? It's Naruto and Kurama. Naruto watched as the entrance to the tent-like house in the center of the village opened to reveal the old man. Ah, Naruto-san. You have returned. And I'm guessing this is little Wendy? Naruto nodded. Wendy looked up, grasping his pant leg like it was a lifeline. Naruto ni. Who is this? She asked. Naruto looked down at her and gave her sad smile. Insert music. Naruto grief and sorrow. This is where you'll be staying now, Naruto said. Wendy's eyes widened before she latched on Naruto. What do you mean? Wendy, Kurama and I are leaving you here with Rubel. Naruto informed her. Her eyes widened even further, clutching him tighter than she had ever done before. No, I'm not leaving you, please Naruto ni-san, let me stay. Naruto frowned when she referred to him as merely her brother, not ni-sensei. However he let it slide given her upset state. Wendy, don't make this harder than it already is, Kurama said. Wendy shook her head. I'm staying, you can't make me go, she said defiantly. Wendy, please. Naruto is doing this for your sake, Rubel said. Wendy turned and glared at the old man. Shut up, you don't even know me, I'm not staying with this man, I don't want you to go. Wendy jumped and lashed onto Naruto's chest, crying her eyes out. Naruto's frown deepened, but he knew he was doing the right thing, right? Wendy, those people from Orasion Seis might still be looking for you. Kurama and I are not always going to be there to protect you. I'm doing this out of the want to protect my student. No, Naruto ni-san. Why you can't, you just can't. Wendy, Ito you, while I knew I had the chance to protect you, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. I'm doing this for your safety, Wendy. The travels that Kurama and I are going to embark upon may contain such dangers and I will not let the only other person I see as family leave before my very eyes, Naruto said. I am not going to let my little sister be taken away from me. Wendy froze as she heard that. She sniffled and looked up at him and saw his determined eyes. Why you are really mean that? She sobbed. Why you see me as your little sister? Naruto nodded. Yes, Imuto. Now get off of me, he said a bit coldly as he pried her off of his chest. She fell to the ground and got back up. Wendy wiped her eyes. B-B but, Naruto ni I want to. I said go, Sky Dragon, so leave me alone and do what I say, Naruto roared. Wendy backed away, tears welling up in her eyes. She looked down and nodded. Why you'll come back though? Right? Tears returned from the depths of her tear ducts and continued to flow forth. Kurama looked at the blonde who kept up his stoic look. but his eyes spoke volumes of the emotion he had towards Wendy as he watched her cry. Truly he took no joy in making his little sister figure cry. He's going to be silent for a long time, the fox-costumed exceed thought. Wendy smiled brightly, despite the tears going down her face as she met with stone-cold silence. Naruto's now hair shadowed his eyes as he bent his head low. Okay, then I'll stay here. Cause Ni-san told me to, she said. Naruto nodded. Wendy turned to go by Rubol. Come my child. I must welcome you to the guild. Rubol said, Kate shelter. Naruto nodded, going along with the lie that the old nervit had devised. You'll learn a lot more from Rubol-san than you could ever learn from me, Wendy. Wendy nodded and then saw Naruto just standing there waiting for her to go. Wendy frowned, but just before she was about to walk off, she turned around, sprinting towards Naruto in a burst of speed and wrapped her arms around his neck. Tears falling with renewed vigor. I'll miss you, Naruto Ni-san, Wendy said softly. Naruto's eyes widened at the blue-haired girl, his body seemingly frozen stiff. Promise me, Naruto Ni. Promise me you'll come back for me. Naruto closed his eyes and he felt as if his arms were now moving on their own accord. Naruto gritted his teeth as he tried to pull them back, but the appendages refused to obey his brain and he suddenly felt himself return Wendy's hug. Much to the surprise of all three of them. Rubol watched with a small smile on his face. The two Dragonslayers remained like that for a few seconds where Naruto even rubbed Wendy's back as he hugged her before he finally released her and vice versa. Wendy planted a small kiss on his cheek before grinning brightly and running off to Rubol's side. Bye Naruto Ni-san. Naruto didn't reply as he and Kurama walked off. The wind picked up around him as Kurama landed in Naruto's hair. Naruto and Kurama then seemed to dissolve as they vanished into the wind. Naruto and Kurama never looked back. However, if Naruto had been facing Wendy and if Kurama hadn't been on his head, they would seen the twin tears that fell from his eyes before he completely vanished. He's going to come back, right? She asked. Rubol smiled at her and nodded. There's no doubt in my mind that he wouldn't leave you. He's the son of a dragon and dragons never break their oaths. Wendy didn't question how he knew about her brother figure's status, but merely nodded. Wendy's smile then vanished before she stuffed her hands into her little dress's pockets. Suddenly, her eyes widened when she felt something in it. Rubol watched the little girl as she pulled out a small piece of folded paper. A red magic seal was on the paper. Having been taught how a storage seal works, Wendy placed her hand on the piece of paper and pumped a small bit of her magic power into it. A plume of smoke erupted from the magic seal and Wendy gasped as she saw a small sapphire, carved into the shape of a dragon with feathered wings. Wendy stared at the sapphire and picked it up, revealing the black cord attached to it and thus revealing that it was actually a necklace. She put it on and she saw writing on the paper appear out of thin air. Wendy teared up once more as she looked at it. She gripped the paper before letting it fly off on the air currents. Some her tears flew back with it as she turned around. She and Rubol then began walking into the fake guild, Cade Shelter. The paper fluttered in the wind before flipping over in the air to reveal 4 simple words that had spoken volumes to the young Dragonslayer. Happy birthday, Maimo Udo. Unknown location, year X 780. The son of Agnologia. Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse. Vendor of the Winds. Conqueror of the Orasion Seis. Master to a daughter of the sky. He was all of these things and many more. He had many strengths and hardly any weaknesses. Naruto had rarely any weaknesses because of his great power. Power that could make him a god or dragon among men. However, as stated before, the blonde had weaknesses. BLAAAARRRGGG, trains were one of those things. Kurama was laughing so hard he began to shed tears. Naruto hung his head over the railing as he threw up from the back of the train car. It was a good thing these train cars always had those back doors and little platforms at the back of the train cars for people who wanted some fresh air. Or in this case, eject whatever they had just eaten from their stomach. Ha 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 ha, I swear kid, out of all the weaknesses in the world, you had to be defeated by a freaking vehicle. Kurama laughed. Naruto growled as he turned to glare at the Exceed. Shut up, furball. I'm going to. Naruto reached to choke the red-furred cat only to feel his stomach act up again as the train shook a bit more before dashing back to the railing and release his stomach contents. Kurama laughed again at Naruto's torment. This was something he was going to hang over him for a long time. Impossible. I'm the Dragonslayer of Agnologia, I shouldn't be able to be put down by a mere train. Naruto thought in pain. Flashback year X 775, Tusan? Naruto asked. The dragon of the apocalypse turned to the small human before him. Yes, Naruto, Tusan, Dragonslayers are practically invincible, right? Agnologia's eyes narrowed in confusion at the question. In a way, yes. Dragonslayers possess incredible magical power that allows them to defeat any enemy. Emotions can also come into play, in which determination, rage, sadness and other emotions can strengthen or weaken the magic power of a Dragonslayer. Agnologia explained. Why do you ask, my son? Well, I was just curious, do Dragonslayers have any weaknesses? Acknowledgia thought for a while, tapping his claw against the ground. Well, no, not really. Though there is one, a stupid weakness it is in every dragon's opinion. Even the original Dragonslayers were affected by this weakness. Naruto's eyes widened. What was it? Acknowledgia took a deep breath. Naruto's eyes widened as the suspense built up from the silence. Then the black dragon spoke. Transportation. Acknowledgia said. Naruto's face faltered at that. What? You mean I'm gonna die from riding a train? Acknowledgia shook his head. No, you wouldn't die from riding vehicles. Rather you get an extreme case of motion sickness. You see, Dragonslayers are affected by motion sickness depending on how powerful a Dragonslayer is. Strong Dragonslayers get extreme motion sickness, and since you all are my Dragonslayer and no doubt you will be strong, I suggest you avoid riding those trains and any other moving vehicles that the humans developed. Weaker Dragonslayers will have little to no motion sickness when on a vehicle. Of course, Grandine's child will have an immunity to the motion sickness due to her great healing powers that make the body immune to it. Acknowledgia said. Naruto scoffed. That's because they're weak. I can't be made sick by a mere vehicle. I bet I wouldn't feel a thing if I rode one of them. Naruto grinned. You may be my son, Naruto, but not even you can withstand your greatest weakness. Now get back to training. Naruto yelled. End flashback. Ooh. Naruto moaned as his face comically swelled up as he prepared to barf again. Natsu's face when he's about to vomit in the anime. Kurama laughed again. I swear, when I get off this thing, I'm gonna blarg. Naruto stopped as he threw up yet again. Kurama chuckled before grabbing the young blonde and hoisting him up into the air. Naruto then felt completely better when he didn't set foot on the train. It's a good thing you don't think of me as transportation. Wait, why didn't you just fly to wherever we're going? Kurama asked. Because I have no idea where we're going. Naruto replied. Kurama's sweat dropped at that. Useless human. Mangy furball. I'll rest you down on the train again. I'll punch you in the face again. That does it. Enjoy your ride of hell. Kurama dropped Naruto back onto the train. You little piece of blah erg. And so the puking, gagging, howling and vomiting began again. Life was good in the world of Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Anabu's town? I didn't think you were serious about that. Kurama deadpanned. I said I swore I would do it. Naruto said. I know, but, really? Did you have to blow up the train? They're abominations, blasphemies that should not be present on Earthland. Humans should learn to fly. Naruto said as he levitated in order to bring across his point. True to his word, he blew up the train to oblivion after he and everyone else got off. The local authorities and the Rune Knights of the Magic Council had searched for the perpetrator that blew up the train, but after a few hours they came to the conclusion that it might have been an engine malfunction and it caused the train to blow up. Unfortunately, the conductor got caught in the blast and was sent to the hospital, but thankfully he didn't see him blow up the train, so no problem. I'll look at them fly. Naruto said with satisfaction at the destruction he caused, watching pieces of metal, wood and stuffing flying all over the place. Naruto had flown into the air a few moments after exiting the train, using his extreme speed coupled with wind magic so no one would notice him before using Mokushiryu no Hoko. The poor vehicle never stood a chance.
You're a sadistic bastard. I learned from the best. Two-san was always good at destroying stuff. Naruto chuckled. Kurama sighed and then silence greeted them as they walked through the town of Anabus. Naruto then looked around the town before frowning.
Is there nowhere to eat? He mused to himself. Kurama sniffed the air and then pointed in a random direction. I smell food in that direction. Naruto looked up at his head where Kurama lay and followed his paw. He turned and began to walk in that direction. Now make a left. Alright? Go straight down this road. Stop! As Kurama yelled that, two speeding SE carriages came speeding down the road. Naruto's eyes narrowed at that. Humans have no consideration for the things around them. Naruto growled. You do know you're a human, right? I'm a Dragonslayer, therefore I'm more than a human, so don't lump me with those pathetic excuses for lifeforms. Naruto said a bit bitterly. What about Tuichi, Ayame and the others? Cross this street, the fox costume wearing cat instructed. Naruto said nothing for a moment as he thought about his past friends. They are exceptions to my opinion. Naruto replied, as well as anyone else who is actually not a waste of my time. What about Ignil's son? Will he be an exception as well? Turn left here. Naruto turned left at Kurama's instruction, but continued to answer Kurama's questions. Should he be strong enough? Yes. And Wendy? Wendy is my student and my precious Imo Udo. She is a better Dragonslayer than anyone else. Except for me, of course. Kurama's sweat dropped at that last part. You're rather self-absorbed, aren't you? Naruto flicked the cat on his head. Says the great Kurama. Naruto retorted sarcastically. Kurama rubbed his painting forehead where Naruto's finger had made contact with it. Says the great Kurama. Now stop. We're here, Kurama announced. Naruto stopped and looked up to find himself in front of a place that sold pasta dishes. Scents of various cheeses, tomatoes and the dough used to make the pasta wafted through the air and entered Naruto's nasal canals. He inhaled deeply. Not bad, not as good as Ichiraku's, but it'll do, Naruto murmured. Nothing compared to your ramen, huh? Nothing ever will. Ramen is the food of the gods. Naruto replied. As he entered the restaurant knocked up to him. The girl looked to be around 13 years old judging by the fact that her breasts seemed to now be developing, given their small size. She had wavy blue hair that ended just below her neck. In the middle of her hair was an orange hairband. She wore the black and white waitress's outfit for the restaurant which was actually doing a good job at accenting her developing curves. The waitress outfit left her shoulder blades to her mid-back, bare. The outfit was completed with some black high heels. Hello, welcome to. The young waitress paused as her brown eyes gazed upon the 16-year-old blonde. Naruto and Kurama blinked as the girl seemed to stare at them, a slight tinge of pink appearing on her cheeks. He's really hot, the girl thought. Naruto waved his hand on front of her face and seeing that didn't work he snapped his fingers causing her to blink rapidly as she returned to the world of the living. Oh, I'm sorry, I was just thinking of something. Welcome to. The girl made a few arm movements and suddenly words solidified in midair above her head in bright colors. Olive Gardens. Please come this way to your table, sir. Naruto followed his mage waitress to his table which was by the large glass window which gave the customers a view of the outside of the store. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her. Solid script, he stated. The girl blinked at that. I'm sorry, solid script. That's your magic, I presume? You're a mage judging by the fact that you use magic. Given by the smell in the air. I'd say the cooks here use magic to cook and you are on a job here because they don't want to lose business by hiring regular people as servers and so you're on a request to act as the entertainment and a waitress. The girl blinked. A slight blush coming to her face as she realized she was staring again. Yeah, actually, you're pretty smart. Are you a mage too? The girl grinned as she asked the blonde her question. Naruto remained stoic. I'd like the spaghetti cooked with the red fire magic. That type of fire tends to bring out the most of the flavors from the seasonings in. Naruto's stomach released a growl of discontent causing the waitress to giggle at him. He looked up, on second thought. Just give me a small plate of everything. And for my cat. Get him some fire whiskey. The girl jotted the order down, but frowned a bit when she realized he had ignored her question. Right away, sir. But if I may ask, why are you giving your cat alcohol? Naruto looked at her with a serious look that caused her to flinch slightly from its intensity. Because he likes it of course. Naruto answered nonchalantly causing the blue-haired waitress to face fault. I see, well I'll get back to you with your order, the girl said cheerfully before walking away. Naruto's eyes followed the waitress until she disappeared behind the door that led to the kitchen. He then looked up when he heard Kurama snicker and looking at him with a grin. What, seems you got yourself a little crush there, Romeo, Kurama winked. Naruto scoffed. She's a weak mage. Solid script, as useful as it is, results in a weak physical condition. She'd have to be stronger if she is to become worthy of being my mate. Naruto replied. Kurama chuckled. But you saw her eyes right? She's a bright girl. A sunny personality too, the kind of girl you would like. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the cat. I despise overly happy people. He deadpanned. Wendy was one and I don't recall you despising her, Kurama shot back. Naruto growled at Kurama's report as he thought about what he could say to counter his argument but his mind had nothing for him. I hate you right now. I know you do. That's why it's so much fun to poke fun at you and make it seem as if you're flirting with people you don't like, but still, she does interest you, does she not? Kurama grinned like the vulpine he could become. Naruto nodded in agreement. She does. Interest me, but not enough that I would consider her a potential mate. Naruto then reached into his backpack and took out a small piece of paper which had a glowing red seal placed upon its surface. Naruto placed his hand on the seal. Seal magic. Release. With that, a rather small-sized book emerged upon Naruto channeling his magic energy into it. The book was a black one with a dark red magic seal imprinted on the cover. A complete guide to seal magic was what was written on the cover in a royal gold. Naruto opened the book and began to read as he awaited his order. Over the past few years, Naruto had come across books in libraries from the towns he had visited along the way. In the restricted section, there lay the books that had information on lost magics or magics that were banned by the council. Of course this completely confused Naruto and Kurama when they learned this because if the magic council didn't want anyone to learn the magic in the first place, why put it in a library and make a restricted section at all? Of course, Naruto made use of his storage seals and took every single book he could find on seal magic. He had been able to upgrade seals to store more than one object in a single piece of paper by making a matrix seal in which that specific seal forms a checkerboard-like structure within the pocket dimension. That pocket dimension then stores as much items in the blank areas of the checkerboard matrix. For example, if he were to use a 2x2 matrix, The maximum amount of items he'd be able to store would be 4. 3x3 matrices hold 9 items and so on and so forth. He had also learned how to use seal magic, breakdown, which was a spell that allowed him to break down any spell and reveal its properties such as strengths, weaknesses and how it was made and constructed. Of course, the spell must be absorbed into a special magic seal to store the spell before it is analyzed by breakdown. Along with that, he had learned many elemental seals that allowed him to absorb elemental magics by coupling the seal magic, elemental seal and seal magic, pocket dimension absorption.
Oh, this one seems useful. Kurama commented as he read along with Naruto. Seal magic, protection, uses the user's magic energy to construct a shield out of pure magic energy. Downside is that it requires much magic energy in order to keep the spell stable.
So far I have learned to break down and analyze spells with seal magic. Break down by performing it on my own spells. I have also been able to upgrade my storage seals so I can use less paper mediums as the storage medium. However, I need bigger sheets if I want to make larger matrices like 7x7 or higher. Maybe there's a seal in her that allows one to travel through the pocket dimensions like what celestial spirit mages do. They are able to utilize their keys as a medium to open the gate from the spirit world to the human world. Maybe I can do the same with seal magic. That would be useful if you wanted to go to anywhere you have been before. Like the mountain home where you in AC. Do not utter that name in public. People know of Tusan's destructive habits and they might become paranoid if they hear his name. Naruto explained to the crimson-eyed feline in a hushed tone. Kurama nodded. Yeah, so as I was saying, maybe you could use those seals to go through the pocket dimensions and go back to where he kept his treasures. True, but the gems and stones I have on me now are well above that of a regular jewel. I could buy the entirety of Anabu's town if I wanted to. Naruto said, but I guess that could be useful to return back home in case I need to restock. Kurama nodded. Exactly, also the defensive seals. Those could be useful too. If you come across the distortion magic user mage again. Naruto growled as the face of midnight appeared in his mind's eye. No need, I can use K's notate to defend against it and besides, my biological parent's seal magic. 5-point elemental shield, still remains strong. Though I will have to look into it as that transvestite and the celestial spirit user are able to attack me and the seal did not become active for some reason. Still it couldn't help to research other defensive seals. Kurama stated. Naruto nodded and then flipped through the book to read up on the defensive seals. Seal magic. 4 Guardian's defense looks like a useful seal. Forms an energy cube around the user and those whom the user wishes to be within the seal. It blocks every attack, however the weakness lies in the fact that the vertices of the cube are its weak points and any attack that strikes directly at the vertices could cause the seal to become unstable and shatter, Kurama said. Interesting. Naruto commented as he read about that particular seal. After a few more minutes of reading, he looked up upon hearing footsteps approach him. So you are a mage? Naruto looked up to see the blue-haired teen from earlier holding his and Kurama's order. She placed the items down on the table before turning to 2 other male waiters. Oi, Jet, DROY, tell Obaa-chan and Oji-chan I'm taking my break now. Naruto followed the girl's gaze to see 2 young boys, at least 1 to 2 years older than her. One of them had spiky orange hair and a rather pointed face. He had a flat nose and had black eyes. His current attire was the black and white waiter uniform which looked basically like a tuxedo and had a red bow tie. The second person was a black-haired individual whose black hair had been somehow styled into the shape of a fishtail or a plant stem of some kind. He had black eyes and had a more square-like chin than his friend. He also donned the waiter's uniform.
The 2 boys waved back and nodded, but they cast dark glares at Naruto. Alright Levi-chan. Jet and Droid turned back to their work as the girl, now identified as Levi, sat on the chair opposite to Naruto. I'm guessing you're related to the owners of this establishment? Naruto asked. How did you guess that so quickly? She exclaimed. You just shouted it out to those 2 idiots who are now glaring at me due to the obvious affections they harbor towards you. Naruto replied in a monotone as he ate and read his book simultaneously. Levi blinked at the blonde Dragonslayer before turning to see the obvious look of jealousy in her partner's eyes. She sighed. I told them I wasn't interested before, but they're so darn persistent, she sighed. Then why don't you just kill them? That's how I solve my problems, but then again I'm not really a person you should be discussing your lack of a love life with. Levi's eyes widened as she suddenly felt a cold chill pass through the air upon Naruto's mention to kill her partners. She gulped as he looked up from his book with an icy look in his eyes that seemed to show contained fury and the feeling for mercy. Levi averted his gaze before changing the topic. So what kind of mage are you? So you come to the hypothesis that I am a mage due to the fact that I read a book on seal magic? Naruto asked. The blue-haired girl, now identified as Levi, smiled back. Yup. Besides, I'm a person who is very interested in anything theoretical. Levi grinned. So seal magic is one of those things, though I'm more adept at rune magic. Naruto nodded before he returned to his book and continued to eat.
Levi stared at the blonde for a while before watching in awe as Kurama drank the fire whiskey straight from the bottle. "How does your cat do that?" Levi asked. "Do what?" Naruto replied. "Hold the bottle. He's like happy that way." Naruto and Kurama paused before looking at each other and sweat dropped. "I can't believe it actually happened. Someone was given that stupid name." Kurama mumbled so that the girl wouldn't hear him talk. "I know, and I was speaking hypothetically back then. Someone was actually stupid enough to name something Happy." Naruto mumbled back. "Who is Happy?" Naruto asked, not allowing Kurama to talk since he wanted to keep a low profile. Levi grinned. "One of my friends. He's a talking cat and he can fly too. Though he seems to have an obsession with fish and like to say, 'I sir,' a lot." "Ha, I told you it was catchy," Kurama murmured softly. Naruto ignored the cat before turning back to his book.
"Alright, girl, are you going to keep bothering me? You have other customers." Levi frowned at the rejection, but stood up and then walked over to his side.
Naruto then saw the girl look at one of the pages he was reading before reaching over and picked up his numerous amounts of empty plates. Unfortunately for Naruto, his eyes happened to look up from the book at the time and he was greeted with the view of her developing bosom, which actually wasn't that bad for a girl now starting her teenage years. Though they were noticeably smaller than how most of the female breasts appeared to be in his travels around Fury. A Dragonslayer is what he was. But a human male is what he also is, and as such. Naruto quickly grabbed his napkin to wipe away the small trickle of blood that left his nose before crumpling the paper and made sure to slice it to shreds with a small whirlwind from his hands. Once Levi took away his dishes and the now empty fire whiskey bottle, she returned to the table only to drop her writing pad that she used to take orders behind her. Levi looked down and turned around, bending down to pick it up. Naruto wanted to pull his hair out in frustration. "Oh come on," he mentally shouted as he caught a view of the girl's panties. Horizontal stripes of orange and white were what made the pattern on the undergarment and Naruto had to cover his nosebleed once more. Damn hormones. Why did Acnologia have to teach me about sexual reproduction? I wouldn't be having this problem if he didn't. Oh right, now I remember. To satisfy the mate I choose. The Dragonslayer of the Apocalypse thought. He quickly wiped away the blood from his nasal caverns before shredding the napkin just as Levi turned around. The young solid script mage gained a thoughtful look on her face as she watched Naruto continue to read. "I'm Levi McGarden." Levi smiled brightly at him. "That's nice to know. Now shoo." Naruto made a shoo motion with his hand as he continued to read. "Have you ever thought of joining a guild? I'm a part of Fairy Tail and it's awesome." Levi grinned cheekily. Naruto sighed in annoyance. This girl just wouldn't leave him alone. Guilds. Nothing but stupid clubhouses where people try to earn money. You're tied down by the Magic Council and ergo you have no freedom in the world when you're in a guild. I have never been a part of a guild for those very reasons. My two-san advised me to not join a guild and I intend to keep it that way. Naruto growled. Levi's eyes narrowed. Well, Fairy Tail is different. People actually have fun and the master doesn't give a damn about the Magic Council and its laws. Your two-san gave you wrong advice then if he told you never to join a guild. Guilds are where people can form bonds, you can have fun, find nakama. The only nakama I need are my Imouto and Kurama. Naruto pointed at the fox-like cat. And if your master believes that if the bonds through a guild are the only way to make it through in this world then he is wrong. Your master is a fool to have even been a part of the guild in the first place if he knows there are consequences to not following the law of the Magic Council. Naruto then stood up and his piercing gaze met Levi's defiant one. "And never mention my two-san in such a disrespectful tone again and I will kill you. Understand, little girl?" Levi watched as his hands twitched showing that he was actually serious about him killing her. However, she ignored it and glared at him. "You're a grumpy person, you know that?" Levi said. Naruto's eyebrow twitched in annoyance but he reeled it in as he calmed down and turned a page in his book. "And you're an annoying little girl who should be doing her job," Naruto retorted. Levi sighed as she tapped the tabletop. "Have you tried to use a seal magic? Pocket dimension gates and seal magic. Some applied in conjunction with a seal magic. Speed enhancement or reverse sum to allow for high speed movement from one place to another through the pocket dimensions?" she asked. Naruto shook his head, but his eyebrows were now raised as his interest in the girl suddenly piqued. "No, I am now learning the art and am yet to put most of the knowledge I know into practice as they say seal magic is very complex. I have basically learned the majority of what there is to know on the subject of seals and their effects, however until I know everything about it, I cannot say I have mastered it. The reason I have not attempted cross-dimensional travel through the pocket dimensions is that they say any single misstroke or miscalculation in the seal matrix of the pocket dimension seal can cause rather unsettling side effects if the magic is cast improperly," he replied, but the way she spoke told Naruto that she knew what she was talking about very clearly. "Then why not strengthen the bonds of the matrix? Apply a seal magic. Chain support spell to hold it intact and fix any mistakes that you would have missed so that the seal itself doesn't fall apart. Then place it in conjunction with a seal magic. Guardian Protector to help you while in the pocket dimension should you be trapped within it. The Guardian Protector seal does allow one to survive for a minimum of 1 hour in any environment from what I've read. The pocket dimensions should be no different. Levi said as she unconsciously reached over and took a soda from the tray table cart that was passing by. Jet and Dua, who were rolling around said cart, narrowed their eyes at the oblivious duo as they began to discuss seal magic. The conversation actually lasted for more than a minute, much to the surprise of the Red Exceed. I knew she would catch his interest. Brat has a thing for smart girls it seems, Kurama grinned inwardly. I must admit you're rather intelligent for such a young girl. Not many people know about seal magic in such advanced detail. Naruto commented as he and Levi were talking about defensive seals. I'm 13, I'm not that young. I'm 16, I'm older ergo you're young. Naruto said as he dug back into his book. You're not that much older than me, it's only by 3 years, Levi deadpanned. But I'm still older, he said with a matter-of-fact tone causing the blue-haired girl to sigh in defeat. As to answer one of your earlier questions, I should tell you that seal magic, chain support does not help in fixing miscalculations or errors made in the seal. It is mainly to ensure the structure is stable when one believes the seal itself is unstable. If you make the seal incorrectly, then you would have to be able to spot it out for if you are unable to. The results could be catastrophic depending on the type of seal that you wish to use.
That is why seal magic is said to be a lost magic. Guardian Protector only provides protection for as long as the magic power of the user is supplying to the seal. 1 hour is not an accurate time frame in estimating the minimum amount of time one can supply magic to the seal. Also, I already have a protection seal to help me whenever I need it. Now if you excuse me, I need to read my book.
What about coupling the seal magic? Mind transfer with a seal magic. Breakdown. I heard that can increase the rate at which a spell to be absorbed into a containment seal can be broken down and the information can be reconstituted into your brain's cerebral cortex where memory is stored, Levi said. Listen little girl, didn't I tell you to? Naruto paused in his reading and quickly took out a sheet of paper and a pen-like object. Immediately magic seals began to be written upon the A4-sized sheet of paper. Levi watched in awe at how quickly he was writing those seals before he added a little bit of seals that made the shape of a box around the original seal array. Seal magic. Steel cage, interesting. He's using it as a way to prevent magic backlash when he activates the seal. Levi thought with an impressed look on her face. Nice choice of protection seal, she commented as she gestured to the steel cage seals. Naruto didn't respond as he then took out another piece of paper and drew up a seal for seal magic. Pocket dimension absorption. The spell that allows one to seal away a spell into the pocket dimension. Naruto then drew a circle of symbols before adding the kanji for wind in the center of it all. I'm not revealing my wind magic abilities to some random girl, Naruto thought. He quickly told her he saw a giant cat outside. She instantly turned to watch before Naruto quickly made his move to activate the seal. Seal magic. Elemental absorption wind. He then added a slight amount of his wind-natured magic to the tip of his finger as informed a minuscule K's no Yeba, and placed it atop the magic seal. Once the wind magic was absorbed into the pocket dimension, he placed the paper atop the combination seal array for the fusion of mind transfer and breakdown. He placed a bit of his magic energy into the combination seal and Levi turned back, having given up on looking for the giant cat, and watched in awe as the wind magic seal on the previous sheet suddenly began to break down completely before vanishing into nothing as if it were never there. Naruto blinked as he felt the information from his small wind spell enter his mind before looking up at Levi. Well, what do you know? You're not a complete idiot like other humans, he said. Levi tilted her head in confusion at the human remark. What do you mean by that? Naruto stood up and took out another piece of paper before unsealing a brown sack the size of his head. He reached into the sack and took out 2 sapphires and 3 emeralds. Here, this ought to pay for my meal. I hear alcohol prices have increased. Levi's sweat dropped at the alcohol comment, but she watched as he dropped the gems into her hands. What the? Why are you paying with these? Naruto raised an eyebrow at the intellectual before him. Because this is how I usually buy things. People have never complained before, in fact, they welcomed my use of precious stones as currency. The multi-magic user replied. The solid script mage gaped as she watched him reseal his money bag along with putting away his other items. I'll be on my way, so keep the change, Naruto said as he and Kurama were about to leave the establishment. Who are you? She asked. Naruto's eyes narrowed at that question. I am who I am. There's no need for me to answer such a question now. If you excuse me, I have to. A large explosion interrupted the blonde's dialogue and he looked to see a number of rowdy fire mages causing a commotion outside. The customers, Team Shadowgear, Naruto and Kurama watched as a bank was being robbed by the fire mages. Well? Naruto turned to see Levi looking at him. Well, what? He replied. You're a mage, go and do something, Levi yelled. Naruto glared at the blue-haired teenager before him. Do not speak to me in such a tone, girl. I could crush you into nothing right now, but I have better things to do than to involve myself in such useless things such as stopping idiots like them. Besides, that person outside has already got it covered. Levi blinked when he saw he was still looking at her, but pointed outside. She followed his finger's direction and gasped when a large mist had gathered in front of the bank. The fire mages were locked inside the large cloud of water vapor. When she turned back, Naruto was gone. Naruto was outside of the restaurant and watched the cloud of mist. There's a strong source of magic power coming from within the cloud. And it's not those pathetic fire mages, Kurama said. Naruto's eyes narrowed before channeling magic energy into his eyes. Mokashiryu no Byakugan, he yelled. His irises and pupils disappeared as if they were fading into his sclera before becoming a shining white. He stared at the cloud of mist and he began to view things as if he saw them with X-ray vision. He saw their skeletons, their muscles and the magic circulatory system. He saw people moving witchery fire mages and one other. From the way their skeletons were structured, he could tell that they were all male.
The non-fire mage, being the one who was not a part of the trio on one end of the mist cloud, was very large, at least 6 feet tall, and was obviously well built given the size of his skeleton. He could see their skeletons moving. The blonde saw magic flow through their bodies shot out of the 3 mages' hands, but the unknown suddenly performed a requip and took the strikes with the flat of the large blade he had summoned.
The thing that intrigued the blonde Dragonslayer was that even though all of this was going on, he couldn't hear what was happening within the mist cloud. He could see it all, but he couldn't hear it. It was as if somebody had muted the entire world within the mist. His eyes widened when he saw the sword-wielding man suddenly move with extreme speed. Speed that Naruto could barely follow, even with his advanced eyesight. The man sliced off their arms in a few steps. The blonde kid that the men were in extreme pain from the way they were running about like chickens with their heads cut off before they actually became like that. The sword wielder swung his sword and beheaded the 3 fire mages in one fell swoop. Naruto looked down at his wrists where the storage seals for Ascalon and Excalibur lay. He could tell from the way that unknown mage wielded his blade, the way he could manipulate the sword of that large a size as if it were any other sword showed that he was a skilled swordsman. He looked back up to see the man return the blade to the pocket dimension using requip before looking at the dead bodies. Naruto lowered the power of his visual prowess so that he could view the man's musculature and saw that the swordsman was grinning widely by the way his facial muscles tugged upwards. Naruto cancelled his flow of magic to his eyes before blinking as his irises and pupils returned. He's a requip mage, Naruto stated. The fox costume cat blinked. Really now? Well, if he uses requip then you can finally have somebody to teach you how to use those swords of your mother's, Kurama said. The blonde nodded before walking towards the mist cloud. He entered it and looked around. The mist was extremely thick and suddenly he felt movement to his left and he summoned his wind blades to take the hit. Naruto went skidding backwards before he heard a chuckle. Interesting. So you were able to sense me even within the mist. You hold promise, brat. Too bad I'll have to kill you. A male voice said. Naruto blinked. No silence? Naruto asked. Silence is only effective on those outside of my mist and only affects the user. I like to hear the screams, so I don't mute anything, but my own movements within the mist. The voice said. Naruto's ears twitched before he ducked beneath a horizontal slice and jumped away. However, he felt the magic energy behind him. It was a good thing Acnology had taught Naruto how to sense another's magic, otherwise he would have been screwed. He quickly summoned wind blades out of pure instinct and blocked the upward vertical slice that aimed to cleave him in half. He then pushed off of the blade and landed a few feet away from the area where he was attacked. I'm not here to challenge you, sword wielder. I'm in need of a teacher, you see. I have been able to use them, but I do not have a technique. I lack the proper instruction to use my blades to their full potential, and from the way you took down those fire mages with such ease, especially when wielding such a large blade like that, you are obviously a master. Naruto said. The voice chuckled creepily, but Naruto and Kurama remained unaffected by the man. Oh, you managed to see through my mist. Ha ha ha. Well, I must admit, you do have some skills with the blade as shown by how you blocked my Kabikirabocho with mere wind blades. You have promise, brat. Let me see your swords and I will see if you are worthy of being my student. I am worthy. Do not take lightly of the fact that I am younger than you. Naruto's eyes snapped open as he revealed the eyes of his draconian father. His magic power spiked, because I am more powerful than you will ever know. The man chuckled at that. My. Such strong magic power in one so young, but you still haven't shown me your swords. Naruto remained silent before tapping the seals on either wrist, and Ascalon and Excalibur appeared in his hands. The man's breath hitched, a sound which caught Naruto's ears. You know of my blades? Where did you get those? Only few mages have ever been able to get their hands on Ascalon and Excalibur. The man exclaimed. Naruto twirled the blades in an expert fashion before stabbing them into the ground, causing the 2 blades to erupt into gold and silver flame. Naruto tightened his grip on the swords as he withdrew the flaming weapons. They are the swords of Merlin. swords able to slay the dragons themselves. My mother was a mage who was able to use these blades. Naruto said. The man chuckled at that before the mist became less thick and Naruto saw the man in front of him, the dead fire mages before him. The man was rather muscular and was 6 feet tall like Naruto had assumed.
His skin was a dark tan color. He wore a black, sleeveless shirt with matching black pants. He wore a pair of black boots. He had vertical, alternating dark blue and white stripes on his leg warmers and wrist warmers. He had bandages wrapped around his lower facial area and neck. A black headband was worn around his forehead. His hair was brown and spiky and he had coal black eyes. The large zanpakuto, the kubikiribocho, was held lazily across his shoulder with one hand.
I've trained myself to use the blade, but I am still not a master. Though it is a blow to my pride, I require a teacher. I would like you to be that teacher. Naruto said. The man chuckled as he stabbed his blade through the already dead body of a fire mage and stuck it into the ground. I will teach you if you pass my test. Come with me. The man vanished in a swirl of mist, Naruto and Kurama doing the same except they vanished into the wind. The mist cloud died down and the crowd gasped when the mist disappeared to reveal the dead bodies of the criminals and the missing bag of money they had stolen from the Anabu's bank. Unknown location outside Anabu's town, hidden deep within the vegetation, there lay a single building. The building was made out of limestone and brick and so it looked a bit run down due to the weathering effects. The front of the piece of infrastructure had a door made of what seemed to be oak or mahogany due to its expensive look. Its roof was red and extremely slanted to allow snow and rain to easily slip down the surface so that it wouldn't pile up on it. A swirl of wind and mist appeared in front of the house and the mixture of water and wind parted to reveal the swordsmen, Naruto and Kurama. Right, here we are. The man grinned beneath his bandages as he stared at the small house. This place looks like a dump, Kurama said. The man's eyes turned and glared at Naruto. What did you say? I said it looks like a dump, Kurama said. The swordsman blinked. That cat talked. He stated. Naruto nodded. Yeah, so, got a problem with talking cats? The blonde asked. The man shook his head. Nope, in fact my adoptive daughter has a cat that talks too. I just didn't know there were more than one. The man said. The two nodded. I see. So what is this exercise you wanted me to take so that you will teach me how to use my swords? The blonde Dragonslayer asked. The man grinned before snapping his fingers. Naruto's and Kurama's eyes widened when they felt movement to their left. Naruto quickly ducked and Kurama leapt upwards. The fox released a fireball to the left, but an ice wall suddenly formed out of thin air causing a small explosion from the point of contact. Naruto stood up, but froze when he felt something cold placed against his neck. Zabuza-sama, who is this boy? Naruto turned to see a young girl, about 1 year older, with black hair and matching eyes. She had a rather curvaceous figure and wore a dark blue battle kimono that seemed to help highlight it. The kimono had a white snowflake pattern on it and she wore a pair of dark blue sandals. In her hands were trios of senbon made entirely of ice. They were currently being held to his jugular, but Naruto narrowed his eyes. It's not polite to point sharp objects. Naruto growled as the unknown girl gasped when she was suddenly sent flying through the air by a whirlwind that appeared out of nowhere. Haku flipped in the air and managed to plant her feet against a tree trunk and used it to ricochet towards the blonde. However, Zabuza appeared in between her and the blonde in a blur of movement and snatched her out of the air before placing her gently on the ground. Now Haku. No need to fight. Yet, this boy wants me to teach him how to use a sword so I will teach him, but I need him to pass a test I have in mind first. The man, now identified as Zabuza, grinned. Who are you? The man waved his hand as Kurama settled back down on Naruto's head. Whoops. Where are my manners? Name's Zabuza Momochi and this is my adoptive daughter I had told you about earlier, Haku. Now boy, the test I have in mind for you is that I want you to fight Haku. However, you don't use magic and you only use your swords. You can mix in melee combat with your sword strikes, but also you can't have your cat fight with you just like Haku. Kurama seemed intrigued by the mention of another exceed, having ignored Zabuza when he mentioned it earlier. Suddenly there was a slight chill in the air when a small, ice blue exceed appeared on Haku's shoulder. Haku-sama, what is wrong? Are you alright? The small cat asked. The cat was the same size as Kurama with shining, emerald green eyes. Her ears and tail were tipped with what looked like sharp pieces of ice. No, Yuki-chan. Everything is fine. Haku told her cat. Yuki nodded before looking at the fox-costumed cat in front of her and gasped when she saw him pull back his fox head-like hood to reveal his face and head. You're like me? Yuki gasped. Kurama nodded. I am an exceed just like you, the crimson cat replied. Your partner is strong. Naruto complimented on Yuki's magic power. Haku nodded. As is yours. Fire and ice do not mix well though, Haku said as she remembered when Kurama sent a fireball her way. The two exceed jumped off of their partners and walked to the side as they watched their partners slip into fighting stances. Seal magic. Release. Naruto yelled. The seals on his wrists glowed before he summoned forth Ascalon and Excalibur. Zabuza-sama. Those are, her surrogate father nodded. Yes, those are the blades of Merlin. The legendary first mage, the last person to possess such tools was my master. Naruto froze at that piece of information. Your master? Was Kushina Uzumaki? Naruto asked with wide eyes. Zabuza flinched before summoned forth his giant blade and held out, the tip of the sharp blade stopping just in front of his face. How do you know the name of my master? Zabuza growled out. Naruto chuckled. How ironic. My mother really did a good job with you. Naruto laughed. Zabuza's eyes widened as he lowered his blade. Kushina Shisho was your mother. She never told me she was married. Or had a child. Zabuza gasped. Naruto frowned slightly. Well, when you are a member of the 10 wizard saints you don't want many things to be public. Naruto replied. The student of Kushina nodded in agreement. True. I will address that matter later. For now, you and Haku will fight to determine whether or not you are worthy to be my student. Even if you are Kushina's son as you claim to be, I will not take on just anybody to be my student. Naruto nodded as he gripped his blades tightly. Haku summoned forth Ice Senbon out of thin air and slipped into a fighting stance. Begin! Zabuza yelled as he leapt away. Naruto roared as he leapt towards Haku with amazing speed. Haku easily dodged the vertical slice from Ascalon before jumping in the air and with a flick of her wrists, sent 2 Senbon at the blonde.
Naruto raised Excalibur and sent forth a blast of golden flame. He jumped after Haku and performed a double vertical slice before twisting and going into an upward diagonal strike with Excalibur. Haku avoided both attacks before she raised her arm and stuck a few ice senbon in her opponent's arm. Naruto felt his arm go cold, but he used Ascalon's silver flames to keep his arm from going numb as he melted the frozen weapons. He and Haku landed on the ground, but the black-haired girl didn't let up as she threw another volley of senbon at him. Ice magic, shattering ice spears. Naruto's eye widened as the volley of senbon suddenly lengthened and thickened, changing from thin needles to large spears. He quickly spun both swords in front of him and sent a tongue of flame at her which spiraled through the air. Haku vanished into mist as the attack took down her attack. She then appeared above Naruto, hands encased in ice to look like giant fists. Ice magic. Frost giant. Naruto crossed both his swords in front of him as the gauntlets of ice crashed against his blades. The force was so great it caused a crater to form beneath his feet, but he managed to remain standing. As Naruto looked up, he noticed her bared teeth, revealing sharpened canines. I knew it, he thought. He pushed her away with a blast of golden flame sending her into a tree, but she managed to flip in the air so that her feet planted themselves against the bark. The bark suddenly froze beneath her feet before shattering as she leapt back towards Naruto with ice senbon in hand. She threw them, causing him to jump out of the way before he looked to see her clap her hands together. Ice magic. By frost, 2 giant ice claws raced towards Naruto out of the blue magic seal. He narrowed his eyes as he quickly raised Ascalon and stabbed the blade into the ground and jumped atop the tip of its pommel and leaped into the air. He swung Excalibur and took on both ice claws as he and Haku clashed. Haku bared her sharp teeth once more. So you are one of them? Naruto stated as he and Haku remained suspended in the air, trying to overpower one another. Sparks and ice shards flew from the friction and Haku's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? She asked. She quickly diverted the golden sword with one claw and slashed with the other. Naruto ducked beneath the slice and then aimed an upward stab to her chin. Haku leaned back and allowed gravity to take effect as she fell. As she fell, she clapped her hands together and an ice blue magic seal formed in front of her. Ice magic. Arctic tunnel. Naruto slashed Excalibur downwards and an arc of golden fire clashed with the blizzard. A small explosion occurred and Naruto flew back, but flipped through the air and landed against a tree and used it to shoot off towards Haku. As he flew through the air, he managed to lower himself to wrench Ascalon free from the earth and spun. Silver and gold fire erupted from the swords and a fire tornado sped towards Haku. Haku's eyes widened before she slammed her hands on the ground and a tall, thick ice wall had erected itself in front of her. The spiraling fire stream caused the ice wall to shatter apart. Naruto smirked as he landed on the ground, skidding to a stop. He twisted and formed a horizontal slash, which sent an arc of fire towards Haku as she reappeared behind him. She ducked beneath the attack and lashed out with a kick. Naruto raised his own leg and blocked the kick. He then ducked beneath Haku's punch before crossing his swords in front of him to block the ice claws that Haku covered her hands with. He parted his blades, thus pushing back Haku before kicking her with a straight kick to the stomach. He quickly twisted and slammed his elbow into her face, sending her reeling backwards. Haku rotated to avoid the double vertical slash that would have cleaved her in half, and a pillar of flame formed from when it came into contact with the earth. Haku cthe fires and wiped the sweat from her brow before taking another deep breath and unleashed a blast of ice and snow from her jaws.
Naruto ran froth and began to slash at the twister of ice, causing the particles to be sent every which way. Haku's eyes widened as her attack was being beaten back and channeled more magic power into her attack. Naruto's eyes widened as the blizzard overwhelmed him and completely encased him. When the ice and snow passed over, it revealed the blonde Dragonslayer encased in a block of ice. Haku smirked as she walked up to him. "Are you pleased, Zabuza-sama? I told you, Haku. I'm your father, so you don't have to call me that. And on another note, no, I am not," Zabuza said. Haku's eyes widened. "Why not?" she exclaimed. Zabuza pointed at the frozen Naruto before Ascalon and Excalibur became encased in fire and melted through his ice block. Naruto then shattered the remains of his ice prison before kicking Haku in the knee, knocking her off balance. He then followed up with a slash to her arm, cauterizing the small wound that he had caused upon its formation. He jumped and slammed a kick to the face before backflipping off of her and stabbed his blades into the ground. Streaks of gold and silver raced towards the ice magic user before she leapt over it, and a large cloud of swirling ice formed behind her out of nowhere. Ice magic. 1,000 water needles of death. The ice tornado then formed over 1,000 ice senbon. The senbon rained down on Naruto as he slashed, blasted, jumped and flipped his way through the seemingly endless storm of needles. However, many a senbon managed to pierce his skin and he felt his body becoming cold as it required a lot of magic energy to keep the flames of Excalibur and Ascalon active, and his muscles were burning as the lactic acid buildup was becoming a bit extensive as he continued to dodge the ice senbon. "Enough!" Naruto roared as he raised Ascalon and Excalibur into the air. He slammed both blades down on the ground and a large wave of fire raced towards Haku. Haku's eyes widened before she began to rotate at high speeds like a top. Hyoryu no Haraben, Ice Dragon's Tundra Whip. Naruto watched as his flames suddenly froze by the extreme sub-zero temperatures of the twin tails of ice that extended from Haku's rear. Haku panted as she had used a lot of magic power to freeze the blazing attack. She swallowed audibly when Naruto suddenly appeared in her face. Ascalon and Excalibur held to her throat in an X shape. Naruto growled as he bared his teeth at her, but Haku returned the glare and bared her own teeth before ice senbon formed out of thin air as she froze the water vapor. The senbon impaled Naruto through several areas of his flesh before she kicked him backwards. Naruto skidded before Haku leapt into the air and ice accumulated around her hands. Hyoryu no Hyotenkaga, Ice Dragon Sub-Zero Fang. She yelled as the ice formed into the shape of sharp teeth. Naruto quickly slashed upwards with Ascalon, sending a silver fire blast at the ice user. However, the flames suddenly froze in midair as the claws came into contact with them. The frozen flames shattered as Haku broke through them, much to Naruto's surprise before he ducked to avoid the attack to his head. The ground froze over as Haku made contact before her feet became coated with ice and she went into a handstand. Hyoryu no Tososo, Ice Dragon's Frostbite Claws. Naruto felt his side suddenly explode with white-hot pain as the foot crashed into his ribs. She went into the force of the attack, going into a cartwheel and stabbed both blades into the ground to complete said cartwheel. He then landed before clutching his side. "I will not be beaten," Naruto growled before withdrawing both swords from the earth and slashed them in an X shape. The X of silver and gold flames rushed towards Haku, who took a deep inhalation of air. Hyoryu no Hoko, Ice Dragon's Roar. She sent out a blizzard from her mouth and it crashed into the flames, causing an explosion at the point of contact. Both Naruto and Haku went flying through the air. Naruto then rushed forth with speeds that amazed even Haku. Zabuza's eyes widened. He's just as fast as her. Impossible. He's not even using his wind magic to increase it. The tan swordsman thought in shock. Naruto leapt and flipped through the air. He roared as he changed into a large wheel of gold and silver fire. Haku raised her arms and they became coated in large quantities of ice before taking on the shape of wings. Hyoryu no Yokugin, Ice Dragon's Wingblade. Haku unleashed the attack at her opponent, the wings aiming to cleave her opponent in two, but she was caught off guard when she saw the wheel of fire deviate from its path and avoid the attack before it slammed into her. Haku tumbled through the air before landing against a tree and slid down its surface. She got up to see Naruto standing before her with a flaming Excalibur pointing at her throat. "You are strong, daughter of Glacia," Naruto muttered soft enough so that only she could hear it. The ice magic user's eyes widened at that. The two observed themselves. Portions of Naruto's skin were covered with ice, preventing him from bleeding much. His shirt and pants were torn in multiple places from the ice senbon and he was currently feeling like he was going to freeze his ass off. Haku was not looking that much better either. Her kimono was torn along the sleeves and had many burn marks covering it. Her face and hands were covered with soot and she had a few cauterized slash wounds from where Naruto managed to strike her. "How did you?" Haku was interrupted as Naruto re-sealed his blades into his wrists and Zabuza began to clap lightly. "Well done, son of Kushina. My name is Naruto, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze," Naruto said. Zabuza's eyes narrowed. So you're his son too? To think she would marry the Kiroi Senko, another one of the 10 wizard saints. They're both dead, you know, Naruto said. Zabuza's eyes widened at that before he gained a sad look in his eyes. I see. Zabuza walked up to Naruto and patted his shoulder. Well, brat. You did good to win against Haku, good Joe. Actually, I lost, Naruto said. Zabuza's and Haku's eyes widened. Huh? What do you mean? Haku said. Naruto smirked before raising his arms and pointed to them. He drew back his torn sleeves and raised his short up to reveal the arms and his side were freezing over. I've been holding the frostbite back with my magic power, but my arms had started to go numb by the time I held them to your throat. Even if I did have you at my mercy, I wouldn't be able to carry it out because I have begun to lose feeling in my arms. Naruto explained. Haku nodded before resting her hands on his frozen arms and side, and the ice shattered apart like glass, revealing his flesh and skin returning back to normal. Naruto sighed in relief before having Kurama come over and heat his flesh to normal body temperatures. Well, brat, you did well. Your unorthodox style, just like Kushina Shisho's, is impeccable. You combine attack and defense in many areas, so you are actually a very qualified swordsman already. However, your grip looks to be slipping. Your blade tilts at an angle when you go for straight blows. Your slashes are a bit too slow for my liking as well. We'll have to work on a lot of things to work on. So I pass? Naruto asked. Zabuza nodded. Starting today, you will begin your training with me. Haku, I'm going to hunt for some lunch first and then we'll begin after we eat. Show Naruto around the house in that time. Haku nodded to her father. Yes, Zabuza-sama. I told you to stop calling me that. I'm your father, not your master. Zabuza's sweat dropped before he vanished in a swirl of mist. Haku and Naruto and their Exceed partners stared at one another in complete silence before Haku decided to break it. So, are you one of us? Haku asked. Naruto blinked. That information is classified. Only those I trust will learn the truth about my skills, Naruto said. Haku nodded. How do you know, you asked? Naruto shrugged. I have managed to catch the names of many dragons along with what element they are related to. I know the names of every elemental dragon and one other type. Naruto explained. Your Hokage-chan would no doubt have been Glacia, dragon of the ice and snow. Abilities are to manipulate snow and ice, and thus her powers are at its greatest during the winter months. Your weakness would be fire Dragonslayer magic, as no ordinary flames would be able to melt a dragon's icy scales. Haku's eyes widened as the blonde basically told her own profile. You know much for someone who is not a Dragonslayer. Haku's narrowed her eyes, giving him an icy glare. Naruto returned the glare with equal intensity. After a few seconds of unnecessary tension, the two ended their glaring contest before picking up their feline partners. Said felines leapt atop their partners' heads and rested there. What are your thoughts on what I am? Naruto asked. Haku blinked at the sudden question as she led Naruto to the house. I think you are one of us. You know too much about our species to be labeled as a non-dragon slayer. The only question is how you are able to mask the magic you have, because your magic is purely wind magic in nature and it is not that of Cyclonus, the wind dragon, or like Grandine the sky dragon. Dragonslayer magic has a specific feel about it that allows us to recognize one another, and yet you do not possess that feeling in your magic, Haku said. Naruto nodded. Then what is your conclusion? I conclude that either you are not a Dragonslayer or you are one, but you do a very good job at hiding it, Haku answered. Naruto smirked inwardly. Excellent, I can't have anyone other than Imouto and Kurama know of my true abilities. Naruto frowned though as the image of his Imouto came to mind, Wendy. He wondered how she was doing and if she still felt sad about him leaving her. He knew she'd be happy from getting that birthday gift he left her, but he knew she would be missing him not long after that. Well? Naruto looked up and saw Haku and Yuki holding the door open for him to enter. Naruto blinked before Kurama slapped him. What was that for? He grumbled. Go inside, you idiot, the fox-costumed cat ordered. Shut up, furball. Naruto yelled back as he flicked Kurama's ears. His actual ears, not the fox costume's own. Naruto observed the house. It was like any regular house. There was a kitchen, a living room, a small dining room, bathroom, and a flight of stairs that most likely led to the bedrooms and another bathroom. It's not much, but it's where we can live in, Haku stated. Naruto and Kurama nodded before they walked over to the couch. He sat down on it, Kurama jumping off of his head and bounced on the cushy surface and purred in content. After spending about an hour to eat, get acquainted with the home and just sit down and do nothing, the two Dragonslayers and Exceed sat on the couch with bored looks on their faces. Want to train? Naruto asked. Yes, Haku yelled all too loudly. Naruto raised an eyebrow in amusement, causing Haku to blush in embarrassment. I mean. She cleared her throat. Yes, let us go train, Naruto-san. Zabuza was walking back from his hunting. A fully grown stag was draped over his shoulder as he returned his decapitating sword to the pocket dimension to await the time it was to be re-equipped again. I'm walking in the woods. Dun 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 dun. I'm walking in the woods. Dun 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 dun. Got some dinner to eat. Dun 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 dun. And then I'm gonna pound the brat into pulp with training. Yosh. Zabuza sang the words to himself. However, as he approached his home he paused when he heard odd noises. He focused on his sense of hearing and listened to what was occurring. Come on Naruto-san. Move faster, do it harder. I'm trying, alright? Damn it. Just shut up, come on, damn it. Just do it already. Zabuza's left eye twitched as he began to hear loud, inappropriate sounds that like groaning, moaning and grunting. Haku, we've been at this for hours and without rest too. I'm getting a bit nauseated from the constant motions. Maybe we should stop for a while. Are you mad? You're the only person who has managed to make me hit my breaking point. Now come at me. If you insist. Naruto sighed. Zabuza's eyes widened and his hands clenched into fists as he heard more groans and grunts reach his ears. The brat is dead. The swordsman roared as he tackled through the few bushes that separated him from his and his daughter's home. He then blinked and stared as he saw Naruto on top of Haku, hand wrapped around her throat, and Haku was holding a pair of ice claws to his stomach. Zabuza-san. Oto-san. Naruto got up and dusted himself off before helping Haku up. We were just training. Haku grinned innocently. I'll take that. Zabuza looked to see Kurama and Yuki taking away the dead stag. But you, and him, and her, with the thing with dot and grr. Zabuza stomped off, causing Naruto and Haku to look at each other with confused expressions. Your father is an odd person, Naruto commented. Haku shrugged. You get used to it. Wanna go again? She asked. No, he stated bluntly. Haku suddenly appeared on top of a tree, head hanging with the words, rejection, hanging above her head. He's so mean to me. She sobbed quietly to herself. Naruto couldn't withhold the sweat drop that formed itself on the back of his head. Women are still an enigma, he thought before going in to help Kurama with the stag. After cooking the stag and, per Zabuza's rules, Naruto and Haku had to have a shower before eating lunch. Of course, Zabuza made sure to look at Naruto carefully. That earlier incident made his mind wander a bit to the inappropriate side of the situations between the blonde and his daughter. After eating, Naruto and Zabuza set out to start their training. Alright, Naruto. Now the sword style I'm going to teach you is called the art of silent killing. Zabuza said. You're a wind magic user, so your wind magic allows you to move quickly, but the thing is that even if you attack, your opponent can still hear you.
Come at me, Zabuza said as he held his Zanpakuto at the ready. Naruto held Ascalon in Excalibur before vanishing into the wind. Suddenly, the grass rustled and he heard the soft whistle of the wind, so the experienced swordsman tilted to the right and he positions his large blade horizontally to take the blow from Naruto's swords. I heard the grass rustle. You see, everything generates sound waves, even wind. Wind is said to howl, whistle and whisper. I heard the wind you used and so I was able to counter effectively. Zabuza explained. Naruto's eyes widened at that. He always thought the wind was silent, but he was obviously wrong, and Naruto was not one who liked being wrong. I see, so how do I become silent? Naruto asked. Zabuza smirked beneath his bandages. Now you see, the art of silent killing is such that it causes you to make everything the user wishes to become silent, to become as such. This is done by releasing a thin, yet concentrated layer of magic energy into the air. This would act as a sort of sound blocker, muting everything around the opponent. It is a style that I developed myself, so I know how it works. It's just hard to explain certain parts. The part with magic acting as a mute is such a part. Now then, as I was saying, once that is done, you channel magic energy beneath your feet. However, since you're a wind magic user, you'd be able to levitate, and so this part would not be worth learning, but if you want to know, just channel a small code of magic energy beneath your feet. This allows the sounds your feet make with surfaces to become muted and thus you are basically silent. Like this? Naruto asked as he vanished into the wind. Zabuza's eyes widened as the boy seemed to disappear and he barely heard anything. Haku, Kurama and Yuki were looking around the training area from the sidelines for the blonde Dragonslayer. However, they suddenly gasped when they spearing out from behind a tree and stalking towards Zabuza. However, Zabuza's ears twitched as he caught Naruto's soft, almost inaudible breathing and the beating of his heart. Well done. I guess your use of wind magic allowed you to master the walking part, but you have to be able to silence even your breathing and your heartbeat. So we'll work on that. Naruto nodded as he vanished from behind Zabuza and reappeared back in front of him. Anything else? Now this style of swordplay is best utilized in areas where visibility is low. So I will be training you in my water magic, hidden mist technique, which is sure to lower your visibility to as low as possible. Then when that is done, I will take away the mist and you do it blindfolded. Your sense of hearing is good, Naruto. Zabuza said. Naruto's ears twitched when his master's voice vanished. He blinked and suddenly Zabuza disappeared from view, and in another blink he was suddenly resting his arm on his left shoulder.
But not good enough. Naruto turned, eyes wide as he saw the grinning swordsman. I didn't hear him at all. Even with my advanced hearing. Impossible, Naruto gaped. Zabuza then raised his arms, one to his chest, while the other was raised high into the air. I will now train you in the art of silent killing. Water magic. Hidden mist. Zabuza yelled and suddenly water vapor surrounded the area. Naruto squinted. I can't see a damn thing. He thought only to suddenly feel cold steel against his neck. Focus, Naruto. Again, Zabuza vanished into the mist once more as he removed Kabikirabocho from new student's neck. Naruto took deep breath and he began to focus on his sense of hearing as well as his sight. He heard the wind blow and turned in that direction only to feel the tip of Zabuza's blade behind him. Good. You heard the wind from the speed I moved at, but you didn't catch me though. You're dead once again, Naruto. Again, Naruto gritted his teeth. This was going to be tougher than he thought. Timeskip. 4 months, year X 780. Steel clashed against steel as Naruto fought against Zabuza, blindfolded. Good, good. You've improved these past few months, Naruto. Zabuza said before he crashed Kabikirabocho against Ascalon. Naruto redirected the large blade and stabbed Zabuza's chest with Excalibur. However, the master swordsman deflected his student's blade with a kick to the elbow. But Naruto suddenly vanished into the wind as Zabuza blade came crashing down on his blindfolded form. Hee, you're playing the old wind trick on me? Well brat, you may have gotten better. Zabuza sliced to his left causing Naruto to have to block with both of his swords. But you're still going to have to better if you want to keep up with me. You talk too much, Naruto said as he suddenly appeared to Zabuza's right causing the brown-haired man to gape beneath his bandaged mouth. Zabuza's eyes narrowed. That's my trick you know, and you gave it a shitty name too. The disappear-o trick? Really, Zabuza-sensei? Naruto said rolling his eyes beneath his blindfold before lazily blocking the Kabikirabocho with Excalibur and then spun and aimed an upward diagonal slash Zabuza's leg. The older male jumped and flipped in the air. Now this exercise seemed rather simple. Fight him with a blindfold on. However, the thing that made this a challenge was the fact that Zabuza had silenced everything around his student. Everything but his own breathing, which was almost inaudible, his heartbeat and his vocal cords so that he could talk when he wanted to. Naruto jumped into the air and backflipped before landing in front of the house where Haku was sipping tea as she played chess with Kurama and Yuki. He has gotten better. Yuki commented in a soft voice, much like Haku's. The Ice Dragonslayer nodded.
He has, but his arrogance and outlook on the human race hasn't changed at all. He sees all, but himself and those he sees as strong, as weaklings and a waste of his time.
Actually, smarts also plays his strength in Naruto's opinion, Kurama told Haku and Yuki. In what way? The Blue Exceed asked as he watched as Naruto rolled to avoid a downward slash from Zabuza before sending an arc of gold fire at him. There was a time in a restaurant we had seen back in Anabu's town a few months back. Met a blue-haired waitress who was a part of that stupid guild called Fairy Ass or something. Fairy Tale. Yuki and Haku corrected him. The fire-using feline waved his paw. Yeah, Fairy Tale. Anyways, he was studying up on his seal magic when the waitress had decided to take the time and chat up our little blonde hero. Boy was he taken down a few pegs when she began to ask him these smart-sounding questions. Good thing he understood them too. Kurama laughed lightly. So he likes the girl? Haku asked with a smirk. She always thought Naruto was one to avoid relationships, but this girl made her think differently. Oh no, the girl was much too cheerful for his tastes, though when she became serious and began to ask him the seal magic questions. He was actually impressed with the girl to such a degree that he had practically, on the spot, changed his opinion of her being a weak little solid script mage, Kurama said. Haku blinked. Interesting, so he has a thing for smart girls? Gotta be strong too. Though from what I saw, that girl had mental strength like you wouldn't believe. It's just the physical aspects that were holding him back a bit, but nothing time won't change, Kurama said with a shrug. She was only 13 after all. Well, that's not too young. It's only 3 years apart, Haku said. She looked as the blindfolded blonde crossed his blades and took a strike from her father before he was being pushed back. He suddenly vanished into the wind and reappeared above her father and sent 2 blasts of fire from the tips of his mother's swords. A large explosion formed from the point of contact with the ground as Zabuza leapt out of the way. Hee, Naruto-kun. You really are one unpredictable boy, aren't you? The Ice Dragonslayer thought as she watched the panting Dragonslayer of the apocalypse. Good job, brat. You've gotten your sense of hearing to such a degree you could go toe-to-toe with just about anyone, except me of course. Naruto scoffed at his master's words. Please, Zabuza-sensei. I was kicking your ass, Naruto said as wiped the sweat from his brow before falling to the ground from exhaustion. A few moments passed as the group watched the downed blonde. A little help. Naruto's cry was muffled by the grass causing everyone to sweat drop at the scene. Kurama shook his head as he flew over to the wind mage and picked him up as Zabuza walked towards Haku. I swear, you're gonna kill yourself one day with how hard you push yourself. The fox-costumed cat muttered to his blonde partner, friend. I'm a Dragonslayer, I refuse to be beaten by a mere human mage. Even if it is one who obviously outclasses me. Naruto added. Kurama raised an eyebrow as he formed a puzzled expression on his face. You admit that someone is superior to you? If I could use my wind magic attacks with my swords, I would wipe the floor with Zabuza-sensei, but if terms of swordplay alone, he is greater than me even when I used wind magic and the silencing technique. He certainly is an excellent fighter, Naruto admitted. I never thought I'd see the day, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, son of the Black Dragon, actually admit to being weaker than someone. I'm not weaker, he's just better. There's a difference cause in a full-on fight with no restraints I dominate. The red-furred cat chuckled at that before resting Naruto on the porch in front of the house. You've gotten better, brat. In fact, you're close to being better than me if you keep doing what you're doing now, but I'll never be better than Hokage-chan. I know, you've told me that a million times. Naruto said with a bored expression as he took a sip of water from the bottle Zabuza threw to him. Exactly. I may be your teacher, but your mother was my teacher. You can't become better tear. The bandage-wearing swordsman said as he deposited Kabikirabocho into the pocket dimension due to his requip. What else is there to learn, Zabuza-sensei? Naruto asked. Zabuza raised a non-existing eyebrow at that. I've taught you a great deal already, brat, and you've soaked it all up like a sponge. You learned too quickly for your own good, but if you want to learn anything else then I guess the only thing that would be worth your time would be to teach you the entirety of my art of silent killing style because Haku is not really one to wield a blade. Her Dragonslayer magic is not one which requires blades. I just teach her some stances to utilize with her attacks, but let's face it, brat. We're not getting any younger and I want to pass on my sword style to someone I trust. Naruto stared impassively at the brown-haired man before nodding. I'll do it. Huh? Zabuza stated intelligently. I said I'll do it. I'll carry on your legacy, my mother's legacy as well. I have her swords and like you said, I have her unorthodox style of sword fighting, but if I combine that with you style, sensei, I can carry both of yours and your sensei's sword styles, Naruto said. My mother died to protect me. I'd be damned if I didn't respect her for what she did and carrying on the will of her and her student is the best thing I can do so far. I aim to become strong. Stronger than my biological father and my adoptive one. Naruto stood up as he unleashed his flaming blades, his eyes burning with equally intense determination. Teach me the art of silent killing, Zabuza's eyes widened as he watched the boy before him and smirked. You got it, you idiotic brat. But I ain't going easy on you. Naruto growled in an intimidating fashion, his pupils unconsciously becoming vertical slits. Easiness is for the weak, Zabuza-sensei. Timeskip, unknown location, year X 784. Two figures walked through the forest. One was a man, about 20 years old. He had spiky blonde locks and cerulean blue eyes. 3 whisker marks adorned each cheek. His skin was slightly tanned and his body was lean, with barely, if not any, fat present. He wore a black, long-sleeved t-shirt with blue patterns on it that made it look like small wisps of flame. He wore a pair of dark blue pants and a pair of white socks with black boots. Around his neck was a necklace with a golden flame charm on it. A long, black trench coat with the kanji for apocalypse was imprinted on it back was worn over the entire outfit. The second was a red-furred cat that stood about 2.5 feet tall, with black fur where its eyes were. Said eyes were a crimson color with black, vertical slits. The cat had black claws on its paws and a long, red, fox-like tail which poked through a hole in the kitsune-like costume it was wearing. The head of the cat was covered by the hood of its kitsune-themed costume, hiding its face from the shadows of the hood. As the two walked through the forest, the bushes and trees began to rustle before at least 10 men, each one wore black armor and held obsidian blades, jumped out from their hiding places. Oi, buddy. We're members of the Dark Guild, Black Knight. If you want to live, give us everything you have and we'll let you live. The blond man chuckled at the man's threat. The sleeping dragon is not one that should be woken up, the small cat said to the members of the Dark Guild. The Black Knights growled beneath their helmets before raising their blades. One last warning before we kill you and take your stuff by force. Hand them over. The 20-year-old blonde shook his head as if in disappointment. I spent 4 years training with a demon of a swordsman and now I finally get the chance to test out my strength. The blonde's wrists suddenly glowed, one silver and the other gold. Seal magic. Release. Naruto yelled as he summoned forth the blades of Merlin. He gripped the shining blades before he vanished into the wind with Kurama. The Black Knight member's eyes all widened in shock. Where'd he go? I don't know. He disappeared, and I don't hear anything. The Black Knight members glanced around blindly, unknowing of the fact that the blonde was standing right behind them, blade poised to strike. He then walked up to the Black Knight and whispered in his ear. Boo! And with that, the blade was impaled through his stomach. Naruto vanished into the wind once more before he began to silently and quickly cut down the Black Knight Guild members.
Some tried to flee, only to be kicked back into their positions. They watched as their fellow guildmates were impaled and or beheaded before they were set afire by the burning blades of Merlin. In what seemed to be agonizingly long hours, but in reality was actually only 2 minutes, the last Black Knight member was left standing. He gulped in fear, clutching his shaking blade. Suddenly, the wind whistled past him.
Brain, heart, liver, kidneys, spinal cord, larynx and lungs. Naruto's voice seemed to come from everywhere as he silently and swiftly walked around his opponent, a mist of pure magic energy coating the battlefield and obstructing the Black Knight's vision. Decisions, decisions. Kurama's deep voice cackled before he frowned. I say to cut him in all 7. Don't take the time to pick a spot. The man was weak-kneed by the end of Kurama's note. I say. Naruto's grin matched that of his draconian parents as he suddenly appeared behind his opponent. I say.
Burn him. Naruto grinned as he stabbed Ascalon and Excalibur into the armored man's chest and he began to burn. The holy flames that could burn even a dragon, consumed the Dark Guild member's body before his body became ashes within a matter of 1 minute, his armor now a grotesque, black piece of twisted metal that was still red from the extreme heat. Naruto flicked his wrist and the pieces of liquid metal flew off his blades before he resealed the 2 ancient swords of his mother.
I think that went rather well, don't you think? The Exceed grinned like the Vulpine he could become. Naruto nodded as he cancelled the haze of magic energy and the environment became visible once more. He replied before walking off, Kurama flying beside him. Flashback 1 month ago, year X784, Naruto. I have taught you all I can. You are now a master in my eyes. Zabuza said as he stabbed Kabikirabocho into the ground to lean up against. Naruto resealed Ascalon and Excalibur before bowing. Thank you, Zabuza-sensei. He responded. The brown-haired man ruffled Naruto's hair, an action that bewildered Naruto as he had never shown true affection. Unless you call being swatted around while a seal protected you from the black dragon of the apocalypse affection. Naruto. You were an excellent student. I'm sure whoever taught you magic would be proud of the mage that you are now.
I thank you again, Zabuza-sensei. Haku will miss having you, but since she's not here to say goodbye, she said for me to tell you too, and I quote, introduce me to that cute, smarty pants, blue-haired girl that Kurama told me about, end quote. Zabuza chuckled as he saw the blonde's eye twitch in annoyance.
Haku is so bothersome. He sighed into his palm. Zabuza then patted Naruto on the shoulder. Now Naruto, I want you to promise me something before I let you leave us for good. Zabuza said with a serious tone. Naruto remained stoic as he watched his, now former, sensei. Promise me that you will uphold the legacy that your Hokage-chan and I had made for you. You are a great swordsman and an even greater mage, Naruto. Do not give up. Do not let anyone tell you that your version of good and bad is wrong because everyone has their own sense of right and wrong. Never forget who you are and don't let anyone try to change you. I've known you for 4 years and I see that you are a cold killer. You see those who are weak as a waste of your time and do nothing to show your discontent towards them as you brutally end their lives, and as for the ones you see as strong, you make sure to have them remember you from the way lives. But I know that beneath that, you care for those you hold precious to you. You treasure those you call nakama, and I want you to stay that way because that is what sets you apart from the scum in this world of ours. You fight for yourself, but when you are around people whom you see as your precious people like Haku and Yuki, you fight for them. You fight for their sakes and you kill for their sakes so that you can make the world a better place for them to live in. Remain true to yourself, Naruto, and continue to follow that path of protecting your nakama. Naruto stared at his master before nodding. I promise, Zabuza-sensei. End flashback.